We all know that ancient India was a land of gods, rituals, and timeless wisdom, but few imagine what daily life truly felt like over 3,000 years ago. What did a quiet morning sound like beside the Sarasvati River? How did families wake, work, and worship in a world lit only by fire and dawn? In today's video, we'll step gently into that world and begin with a morning in a Vedic home. So let's not waste any time and let's begin. The faint glow of the household fire grows steadier, and with it the world around you begins to take shape as the darkness thins into a soft blue, the quiet color that always appears just before sunrise. Inside a modest thatched roof home built from river reeds and timber, a family stirs as a new day begins. The first movement comes from the matriarch, rising from her straw mat with deliberate grace, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders to meet the cool air. She settles beside the hearth, coaxing the sleeping embers back to life with practiced hands, soft breaths, and patient movements, until sparks kindle into a brightening flame that spreads warmth through the single-room home. This fire is more than heat and light. It is the spiritual heart of the household. Before anyone speaks or eats or steps outside, the matriarch honors the flame with a drop of clarified butter, watching it sizzle and release a faint sweetness into the air as a quiet offering to Agni. The scent of smoke mingles with the cool breeze slipping through the doorway, carrying the distant murmur of the Sarasvati River as it moves over polished stones. Outside, cattle shift and call to one another, greeting the morning with low, familiar sounds. Their presence is woven into the family's survival: milk, strength for plowing, calves that promise future stability. So their voices are as much a part of dawn as the fire itself. On the far side of the home, the father wakes slowly, rubbing the night from his eyes before sitting upright to watch the fire's glow paint the clay walls. Seasons spent outdoors have hardened his shoulders and hands, yet in these quiet moments between rest and labor, there is a softened gentleness about him. The children wake next, the older boy stretching his long limbs as he adjusts to the day, while his younger sister curls closer to the warmth, blinking sleepily at the firelight. A clay pot waits to be filled, so the boy steps carefully outside. The air is crisp and carries the scent of earth and river silt, clean and mineral-rich. Birds hop along the packed soil, searching for morning insects, while the sky brightens into a pale gold that hints at a clear day ahead. He hears leaves whisper in the breeze, insects humming in the grasses, and cows calling softly from their enclosure. The father joins him, taking a long breath as he surveys the fields and sky. These early sounds, rustling branches, moving cattle, water against stone, form the unchanging rhythm of their mornings, guiding him into the day's tasks. Inside, the matriarch begins preparing the first meal, measuring grains stored in clay pots, grinding them rhythmically on a stone smoothed by years of use. As she works, she hums an old melody, one passed through generations, a tune that holds family memory without needing to be explained. The grandmother sits with the youngest child beside the hearth, braiding her hair with gentle fingers while telling soft stories about the river, how its currents nourish the land, and how its presence has guided their people as far back as anyone can remember. The girl listens with dreamy eyes, absorbing the story through tone and warmth rather than detail. Outside, the father has moved into the work of the day. He checks the yoke for the oxen, inspects the plow, and walks the fence line that guards the pasture. These simple tasks carry deep weight, for each step ensures the family's well-being. Nothing is rushed. The day begins with care, preparation, and respect for the land that sustains them. Soon, he will guide the cattle to fresh grazing grounds and tend to the fields, where the soil waits to be shaped and nurtured. The sky brightens fully, the air shifts from cool to expectant, and the morning's quiet transitions into purposeful motion. The father straightens, ready to begin the agrarian and pastoral work that anchors their lives. As he moves toward the fields, the soft glow of the household fire behind him and the awakening land ahead, the day opens in its familiar rhythm. And in this gentle movement from hearth to pasture, from the intimate warmth of family to the wide living world of fields and cattle, the story begins to turn toward the work awaiting him, guiding us seamlessly into the next chapter. The father runs his hand along the wooden yoke resting against the fence, checking for splinters that might irritate the oxen. It's a simple tool, carved from a single log and polished by seasons of use, but it carries the weight of the family's survival. The boy helps by securing the leather straps, worn soft and dark from years of sweat and sun. Together, their movements are unhurried but efficient, shaped by a bond forged through countless shared mornings. Nearby, the oxen stand patiently, their hides a warm caramel hue beneath the growing sunlight. Their massive horns curve in elegant arcs, casting long shadows over the ground. The father approaches them with a small offering of barley grains, not as a bribe, but as recognition, a gesture acknowledging their labor and spirit. Animals in this world are not merely tools. They are companions, symbols of wealth, and participants in the sacred order of life. The eldest son opens the enclosure gate, and the oxen lumber out with slow, deliberate steps. The father murmurs a few ritual words under his breath, calling for Agni's guidance and the earth's favor. These are not elaborate rites, but simple phrases woven into daily life, reminders that every action, from plowing a field to collecting water, exists within the larger harmony of existence. Together, father and son walk toward the fields just beyond the village's edge. The sun lifts higher, brushing the tops of the tall grasses with gold. The boy glances at the father's stride, trying to match it, although his own legs are still growing into their strength. He carries a small bundle wrapped in cloth that holds repair tools in case a plow blade loosens or the yoke needs adjusting. Remote as the village is, every family has learned that self-reliance is a necessity. As they cross the pasture, the herd of cows lifts their heads. A few calves trot forward, curious and unafraid. The father greets them with a low call, each note slightly different, a gentle language the animals know well. Cattle in this time are more than property. They are gifts from the gods, living embodiments of abundance and prosperity. A prosperous herd means security. A gentle cow is considered auspicious. A healthy bull is the pride of a clan. And so, these quiet rituals of greeting and care serve as daily acknowledgements of blessings received. The boy steps ahead to inspect the grazing area. He checks the grass for signs of overuse or pests, and scans the perimeter for tracks that might indicate a wandering predator. Even in this peaceful landscape, caution is a constant companion. The father, watching him with a subtle smile, sees the boy growing more confident, more attuned to the rhythms of land and herd. The fields lie just beyond a rise in the earth, spreading out like a patchwork of browns and greens. Rows of barley and early wheat stand ready to be worked, their stalks brushing softly in the breeze. The soil smells rich and cool, scent that signals promise. The father guides the oxen to the plow, securing the yoke with practiced ease. When the blade sinks into the earth, it does so with a satisfying crunch, cutting a narrow path that widens as the oxen move forward. The boy walks beside the blade, watching the soil overturn, revealing insects scrambling for cover and roots stretching toward the light. This quiet transformation is more than physical labor. It is a conversation with the land, a request for nourishment that must be made with respect, understanding, and patience. Every furrow carved into the earth carries an echo of the generations that have worked before them and hints at the many that will follow. Though the work is demanding, the morning air makes it bearable. Birds circle overhead, calling to each other, while a warm breeze brings the scent of distant groves. The father occasionally pauses to adjust the plow or rest the oxen, using each moment to pass on knowledge. He explains how soil texture changes with the seasons, how to recognize subtle shifts in cattle behavior, how rituals woven into daily tasks strengthen one's relationship with the divine. The boy listens closely, absorbing each detail with the kind of attentiveness shaped not by obligation, but by pride. These lessons are not written in books, nor taught in formal schools. They are carried in the hands and voices of those who work the land, passed from parent to child, as naturally as the dawn passes into day. As the sun climbs higher, the sounds of other families at work begin to drift across the fields. Distant laughter, calls to livestock, the rhythmic thud of grinding stones, and the occasional ring of metal on metal. These layered noises form the living heartbeat of the village, each household contributing its own pulse. The father glances toward where the settlement begins, knowing that after tending the fields, they will rejoin that bustling world of neighbors, artisans, and traders. And as their morning labor continues, the fields themselves become a quiet reminder that daily life extends far beyond a single home. It stretches into pathways that lead from family to family, forming the broader community that awaits just beyond the horizon, inviting us gently toward the world we will explore in the next chapter. The village appears gradually through the shifting light, its rounded homes arranged in a loose circle around a central open space. These dwellings, made from timber frames packed with clay and straw, stand warm and earthy against the landscape, their curved walls reflecting the architectural language shared across many clans of the Vedic world. Each roof slopes gently downward, wrapped in layers of grass that insulate against heat and rain. Smoke rises from a handful of hearths, drifting lazily across the sky as families finish their morning rituals. At the edge of the village, cattle wander freely in a shared grazing area, their bells tinkling softly. Women, returning from the river, carry clay pots balanced on their hips, the vessels still glistening with droplets from the cool morning water. A few pause to greet each other, exchanging brief smiles or small fragments of news. The father and his son step aside to let them pass, acknowledging each one with a respectful nod. The central plaza is alive with movement. Children gather here first, as they always do once morning tasks are done. They run across the beaten earth, chasing each other with shouts of joy, their bare feet kicking up dust that glows in the sunlight. A pair of boys attempt to shape mud into little cattle figurines, copying the animals they watch over every day. Nearby, two girls skip around a circle drawn in the dirt, inventing new games with rules only they understand. Their laughter rises and falls like birdsong. To one side of the plaza, artisans begin their daily work. A potter sits before his wheel, shaping clay into bowls with fluid, practiced motions. His fingers guide the form as though coaxing something already living beneath the surface. Each turn of the wheel hums softly, accompanied by the rhythmic tap of a wooden paddle smoothing the sides. A young apprentice watches closely, trying to mimic the master's movements on a smaller wheel. Not far away, a metalsmith tends to a small furnace dug into the ground. The glow from the coals illuminates his face as he checks the temperature with careful precision. Bronze tools and ornaments rest nearby, each piece reflecting the knowledge carried forward from earlier generations. A hammer strikes metal, measured and controlled, sending a sharp ring through the air. The sound is familiar, one of the many daily notes that make up the village's constant, gentle music. Traders move among these artisans, laying out goods on mats or low tables. Some bring salt from distant lands, others carry fragrant resins wrapped in cloth, beads carved from shell, or small bundles of woven thread dyed with natural pigments. They call out quietly to passing villagers, offering their wares with a smile that carries both business and warmth. Tending the land is essential, but commerce keeps the community connected to a wider world. Elders gather beneath a large neem tree at the center of the settlement. Their mats are arranged, in a half circle facing inward, forming a small council where matters of importance are discussed. Their voices are steady but unhurried. They speak of grazing boundaries, water distribution, and upcoming festivals. Occasionally, a younger member of the village approaches with a question or concern, bowing their head respectfully before speaking. The elders listen, offering guidance shaped by decades of experience and reflection. The father and son pause nearby, waiting for a moment to greet the council. The father's presence earns nods of acknowledgement. He is respected for his reliability in both labor and temperament. One of the elders, a man with grey-streaked hair and clear eyes, asks after the condition of the fields. The father explains that the soil is moist from the recent rains and that new shoots are beginning to appear. His words bring quiet satisfaction to the group. Harvests may still be months away, but each stage of progress is its own blessing. A group of young men gather along the outer ring of the plaza, preparing nets for an upcoming hunting trip. They check each knot carefully, ensuring no weakness will cost them a catch. Their voices weave together in casual conversation, discussing everything from weather patterns to the behavior of the deer that frequent the nearby forest. Periodically, they glance toward the elders, waiting for the signal that the day's meeting is nearing its end. Behind the bustling activity, the village's design reveals itself as something more than simple practicality. The circular arrangement of homes reflects an understanding of community as a shared space, rather than a collection of separate households. Every path leads back to the center. Every sound carries from one family to the next. Every voice contributes to the steady pulse of daily life. As the father and son move through the plaza, the boy takes in each detail: the conversations, the work, the subtle hierarchies and cooperation that support the community. He begins to understand how the village is not just a place to live, but a living organism shaped by its people. The order of things, the relationships, the responsibilities, they all fit together in a pattern that feels both natural and deeply intentional. And as the elders shift the conversation toward matters of governance, toward councils, decisions, and the voices that guide the clan, the story drifts toward the structures that underlie this harmony, inviting us to step into the world explored in the next chapter. The pavilion stands slightly apart from the rest of the village, its woven roof supported by sturdy wooden beams shaped from neem and acacia trees. The space is open on all sides, allowing breeze, birdsong, and the scent of morning fires to drift through freely. Here, under this sheltering canopy, the Sabha and Samiti, the twin councils of Vedic governance, convene. The Sabha gathers first. These are the elders, seasoned men, who have lived enough seasons to understand how a decision today ripples into tomorrow. They take their places on low mats arranged in a circle, a symbolic gesture that each voice carries equal weight in matters of wisdom. Their presence is calm, steady, like the slow current of the Sarasvati itself. Though age has softened their strength, it has sharpened their judgment. The father and his son stand at a respectful distance, close enough to listen, but far enough not to intrude. It is customary for youths to observe when they can, learning how disputes are resolved, how agreements are shaped, how the subtle balance of fairness is maintained. The boy straightens his posture unconsciously, aware that moments like these form the backbone of his future role within the clan. A matter of grazing rights is first on the agenda. Two neighboring families have noted that the rains have shifted, altering the pattern of fresh grass in the pasture. The elders listen as each household presents its case. Voices remain soft, measured. No one interrupts. Once both sides have spoken, the chief elder closes his eyes for a moment, fingers tracing the rim of a clay bowl, as though searching for the right words to restore harmony. When he speaks, his tone is gentle. "Let the land decide," he says. "Tomorrow at dawn, both families will walk the field together. Where the grass grows highest, let your cattle graze first for 7 days. Then trade places. Prosperity shared is prosperity grown. There is no applause, no triumphant outburst, only nods of acceptance. The families bow to one another, not as opponents, but as partners in survival. The boy exhales softly, realizing he had been holding his breath. The father gives him a quiet look, as if to say, "This is how peace is kept, not by force, but by listening." Next comes a matter of justice. A small dispute has arisen between a potter and a trader over the price of goods exchanged earlier in the week. The sabha listens again, weighing the words, watching body language, considering reputation. In Vedic society, truth is not a rigid stone, but something understood through context, tone, sincerity. When the eldest council member finally speaks, his decision is balanced, designed not to punish, but to restore fairness. "You shall bring 2 witnesses to vouch for the trade tomorrow," he says to the trader. If both agree that the exchange was fair, the matter ends. If not, you will return an equal portion in goods to the potter. Let clarity bind your agreement. The potter bows his head in acceptance. The trader does the same, a mixture of relief and humility passing over his face. The boy beside the father watches closely. He learns that justice here is not about retribution. It is about alignment, about ensuring the threads of community do not unravel. Once the sabha concludes, the wider samiti gathers. This council includes not just elders, but representatives from various households, farmers, herders, artisans, and traders alike. Its purpose is broader, to discuss seasonal planning, trade opportunities, communal labor, and the rituals that mark significant points of the year. At the front of the pavilion, a young man unfurls a simple woven map showing which fields are ready for sowing, which require clearing, and where a new irrigation trench might be dug. The members of the samiti lean in, studying the patterns. Voices rise and fall like a calm tide. Suggestions are offered, agreements are refined. Each participant contributes a small thread to the collective fabric of governance. Throughout the meeting, subtle references to ritual duty emerge. One elder reminds the group that a fire offering should be made before expanding the grazing area. Another suggests inviting a Brahmin reciter to chant blessings before the new irrigation work begins. These mentions are not corrections or demands. They are gentle reminders that practical life and sacred practice are inseparable. The father's eyes soften as he listens, familiar with this dance between responsibility and devotion. The boy absorbs it all. How leaders speak, how disagreements soften, how decisions lean toward balance rather than dominance. He senses that every practical choice is supported by an unseen structure, a spiritual thread that runs beneath the governance of the clan. As the meeting concludes, a final topic emerges: the need to prepare for an upcoming ritual honoring the household fires and the divine forces believed to watch over the community's fortune. The elders agree that a priest should be invited, and offerings gathered. The boy glances at his father, recognizing that these preparations will shape the next days. And as the councils disperse and the villagers return to their tasks, the rhythm of sacred duty begins to stir beneath the practical concerns of the day, guiding us gently toward the realm of spiritual life waiting ahead. The household fire burns gently when father and son return, its glow steady and comforting beneath the sloping thatched roof. The matriarch has tended it carefully through the morning, feeding it slivers of wood, adjusting the stones around the base, and whispering small invocations under her breath. The flame is not large, but it is alive, holding a presence that feels both intimate and vast. For the family, this fire is more than warmth. It is a living space where the human and the divine meet. The youngest child sits near the hearth, drawing shapes in the dust while her grandmother works beside her. The soft crackle of the flames gives the room a gentle rhythm, a quiet heart that pulses through the home. When the father steps inside, he pauses before crossing the threshold fully. With a slow inhale, he acknowledges the fire with a slight bow of the head. The boy mirrors him, following the subtle ritual he has practiced since childhood. The matriarch gathers a small bowl from a shelf, its surface smooth from years of handling. Inside rests a golden pool of clarified butter, ghee, glimmering softly in the firelight. This ghee was churned earlier in the week, the result of careful work and patience. She dips a carved wooden spoon into the bowl, letting a thin stream of the warm liquid fall onto a waiting piece of dried grass. The smell rises immediately, buttery, sweet, faintly nutty. It blends with the earthy scent of burning wood. With her offering prepared, she adjusts her posture, sitting a little taller. The father settles beside her, and the boy kneels nearby. Even the grandmother straightens, though her movements carry the slower grace of age. The girl slides closer, leaning lightly against her grandmother's side. The matriarch lifts the small offering of ghee and holds it toward the flame. Her voice emerges in a soft chant, steady, repetitive, soothing. She recites from memory, each phrase melding into the next as though the words themselves are carried on the warmth rising from the fire. The hymn is simple, one used for household blessings, thanking Agni for protection, for guidance, for carrying prayers to the unseen realms. When she drops the ghee-soaked grass into the fire, the flame responds instantly, flaring upward with a sharp but gentle brightness. The sound is like a quiet sigh. The girl's eyes widen with delight, and even the boy watches with a reverence that feels instinctive. This small ritual is woven so deeply into their lives that it no longer feels separate from daily tasks. It is the breath between each moment. The father then adds his own offering, a pinch of barley grains, held between calloused fingers. He murmurs a softer chant, offering thanks for the morning's work, and asking for strength in the day ahead. When the grains touch the flame, they give off a faint crackle, glowing briefly before disappearing into the ember bed. The fire dances with subtle shifts, its movements mirroring the tone of the home. The grandmother closes her eyes, reciting her own quiet mantra, one she has carried since her youth, learned from her own mother, who learned it from hers. These chants serve many purposes. They steady the mind, honor the gods, preserve lineage, and anchor the household in something larger than itself. After the offerings, the family sits quietly for a few moments. This silence is not empty. It holds the echo of hymns, the warmth of shared intentions, and the soft presence of something sacred. The fire crackles gently, as though responding to the calm. The boy studies the flame with thoughtful eyes. He has recited simple mantras since he first learned language, yet each year brings deeper understanding. He begins to sense how ritual threads through everything, from the plowing of fields to the cooking of meals, from council meetings to seasonal festivals. The fire is both literal and symbolic, a reminder that life is grounded in the physical world, but always reaching toward the spiritual. As the matriarch rises to prepare the midday meal, the father steps outside to check on the cattle again. The boy lingers by the hearth, tracing the patterns of soot on the stones, imagining how each hymn travels upward with the smoke. The grandmother rests her hand on his shoulder, recognizing his quiet curiosity. "You watch the fire," she tells him softly. "Someday you will listen to the priests and their great chants, and you will understand how this small flame is part of something vast." The boy nods, absorbing her words like another offering made to the morning. Outside, the village is beginning to shift again. People prepare for trade, for learning, for the many tasks that carry them through the day. And beyond the threshold of each home, priests move from settlement to settlement, carrying deeper rituals, longer hymns, and the weight of sacred knowledge that binds communities together. As the boy finally rises to join his father outside, his thoughts drift naturally toward those wandering reciters and teachers, the men whose voices shape the memory of an entire people. Their presence in the wider world is calling softly, guiding us toward the next chapter waiting just beyond the fire's edge. The Brahmin arrives just as the sun reaches its late morning height. He walks with an unhurried pace, his staff tapping lightly against the packed earth. His robes, simple but well kept, sway gently around him. A woven satchel hangs from his shoulder, heavy, not with objects but with the responsibility of knowledge carried through countless miles. Villagers step aside respectfully as he passes, offering greetings with palms pressed together. His presence is neither commanding nor imposing, yet the space around him seems to settle into quiet order. The boy stands at the threshold of his home, watching the reciters approach. A mixture of awe and curiosity stirs inside him. He has heard priests chant before, mostly during seasonal festivals or clan gatherings. But a traveling Brahmin is different. He carries not just sacred verses, but stories of other villages, other fires, other dawns. He is a thread binding many communities into one great tapestry woven by memory and song. The father steps forward to receive him, offering water in a clay cup. The Brahmin accepts with a nod, touching the rim briefly to his forehead before drinking, a gesture of gratitude for the hospitality extended. After he quenches his thirst, he sits beneath the shade of a neem tree, adjusting his posture with the ease of someone accustomed to long journeys. Children gather first, drawn by curiosity. Adults follow more slowly, forming a circular space around him. The air grows still, as though even the birds in the branches anticipate what is about to unfold. The Brahmin closes his eyes, breathing in the scent of the village, the smoke, the grain, the sun-warmed clay. And when he opens them again, they carry a softness that speaks not of authority, but of devotion. He begins with a hum, low, steady, almost like the earth itself exhaling. It rises gently, forming the foundation upon which the first syllables of the Rig Veda emerge. The chant is not spoken as ordinary words. It is sung, shaped, stretched, allowed to resonate. Each note hangs in the air like a bead on a sacred thread. The boy leans forward, heart steadying in time with the rhythm. The sound feels ancient, older than the fields, older than the village, older even than the stories told by his grandmother. It carries with it a sense of something vast yet comforting. As the verses flow, the cadence rises and falls like waves on the Sarasvati, each movement carrying meaning shaped by countless generations of reciters who memorized these hymns syllable by syllable. No scripts lie open before the Brahmin. No scrolls rest in his lap. Every word, every intonation, every pause resides in memory. This is the living Veda, not a book, but a voice. Not ink, but breath. The preservation of sacred knowledge depends entirely on human devotion, on the discipline of those who dedicate their lives to accuracy, reverence, and continuity. When the first hymn concludes, the Brahmin breathes deeply, allowing the sound to settle before beginning the next. He shifts into a narrative verse, telling the story of how the universe arose from a single cosmic breath, how order and truth emerged from the stirring of light, how the devas and elements took their places in the world. His voice changes tone with each image, now soft as morning mist, now rich as deep earth, now bright as fire. The villagers listen in absolute stillness. Even the smallest children, who moments before were fidgeting in the dust, sit entranced by the rhythm. The boy feels as though he is not simply hearing the hymns, but stepping inside them. Each sound seems to vibrate through his chest, anchoring itself somewhere deep within. After several verses, the Brahmin allows a pause. He opens his eyes and regards the children gathered closest to him. One girl asks how he remembers so much. Another wonders whether the hymns sound the same in distant villages. The Brahmin smiles gently, answering with patient warmth. The hymns live through us, he explains. Each voice is a doorway. When we chant, we do not recite from memory alone. We join the voices of those who came before. Their breath becomes ours, and ours will someday become part of the great river of sound that flows across time. He taps his staff lightly against the earth, mimicking the rhythm of his chant. This is why we keep the cadence pure, not for rules alone, but because the sound carries truth. Sound is the first bridge between human and divine. His words resonate deeply with the boy, who remembers the hum of the household fire, the soft chant of his mother, the whispered mantra of his grandmother. He realizes now that each of those small sounds belongs to a greater pattern, one that stretches far beyond their home. As the Brahmin prepares to continue his recitation, a subtle shift moves through the group. They understand instinctively that the next verses will carry a different quality, more melodic, more intricate, revealing the deeper musicality woven into Vedic chanting. The murmur of anticipation stirs gently in the air, guiding the story toward the world of sound and melody waiting to unfold. And with the Brahmin's next breath, long, steady, resonant, the path opens naturally into the exploration of music, tone, and mantra that awaits in the following chapter. The Brahmin shifts his posture slightly, placing one hand on his knee while the other rests lightly on his staff. His eyes soften as he studies the children gathered around him. Perhaps sensing their growing curiosity, he gestures for them to come closer. The boy moves eagerly, settling among them, his posture attentive but relaxed. Now, the Brahmin begins in a low melodic voice, "Let us speak of sound, for sound is the first teacher." He touches the ground with his fingertips, then lifts them slowly, as if drawing something upward. From the earth comes rhythm, from the breath comes tone, and from the union of rhythm and tone comes mantra, words shaped into music that the devas can hear. He raises his chin slightly and begins a new chant. This time the melody is more elaborate, the tones rising and falling in patterns that circle back on themselves like river coils. Unlike the earlier hymns meant for devotion, this chant seems crafted to illuminate the layers of the sound itself. The children's eyes widen. A few instinctively sway with the rhythm, their small bodies responding even before they understand. The boy notices how each syllable vibrates differently, some like a deep hum in the chest, others sharp and bright, like the call of a bird at dawn. The Brahmin pauses and repeats a single phrase several times, inviting the children to try it themselves. They echo him clumsily at first, scatter-shot notes tumbling over one another. But the Brahmin does not laugh. Instead, he smiles warmly and taps his staff lightly to mark the beat. With each repetition, the children align more closely, their voices weaving into a fragile but growing harmony. A group of elders watch nearby, nodding approvingly. One of them lifts a small hand drum, its surface stretched with cured hide, and begins tapping out a steady rhythm. The sound is earthy and grounding, like a heartbeat. Another elder retrieves a bamboo flute from inside his robe. He tests a note, adjusting his fingers until the pitch settles into something clear and gentle. When the drum beat, the flute melody, and the Brahmin's chant merge, the village seems to shift into a slow-moving current of music. The air stirs lightly, as though carrying the tones outward, and the birds in the nearby tamarisk trees pause their chirping, listening. The Brahmin explains that different chants follow different melodic frameworks, early forms of what future generations will call ragas. Some evoke dawn, others twilight. Some call forth courage, others peace. The cadences are not chosen at random. They reflect the rhythm of life itself. Morning requires clarity. Evening asks for stillness. Sacred offerings demand resonance. Each moment of the day has its own musical nature, and the chanter's task is to match it. He demonstrates by shifting into a new melodic pattern, softer, more contemplative, flowing like a stream in the shade. The children quiet instantly. Even the elders adjust their breathing to match the calming pull of the melody. The boy feels the sound settle into his chest, expanding gently outward. He glances at his father, who stands at the back of the group, with arms crossed, watching with a serene smile. These chants have carried his people through droughts, migrations, harvests, and celebrations. They bind stories, laws, and spiritual truths into a form that cannot be lost as long as breath remains. One of the elders interrupts softly, asking the Brahmin to explain the meaning behind a particular verse from the morning's recitation. The Brahmin obliges with patience. He describes how certain metaphors in the Rig Veda hold multiple layers, how a reference to a river may also symbolize the flow of knowledge, how a hymn praising dawn also reveals insights about human renewal. The children listen, eyes bright, absorbing the idea that poetry and instruction are inseparable in their world. With each explanation, the village's musical world expands. The drumbeat slows, the flute lingers on a long floating tone, and the children begin to hum quietly, matching small fragments of what they've learned. The boy tries to capture the exact cadence of one phrase, repeating it under his breath until it settles comfortably on his tongue. The Brahmin watches him with thoughtful approval. Learning begins with listening, he says, but it grows through practice. Every child's voice is a seed. Some will grow into reciters, some into teachers, some into poets, some into leaders. Sound is the foundation for all pathways. His words carry a depth the boy doesn't fully understand yet, but he feels the truth beneath them. The chanting, the music, the rhythm, all of it forms the first steps on a journey toward greater knowledge. Understanding sound is more than entertainment. It is preparation. As the musical session gently winds down, the children disperse in small clusters, humming what they remember. The elders return to their tasks. The Brahmin rises slowly, stretching his legs after the long chanting. The boy lingers a little longer, still turning the sounds over in his mind. His father rests a hand on his shoulder, guiding him homeward. The day is far from over, and as they walk, the boy realizes that learning the music of the Vedas is only one part of the education expected of him. There is more, much more to understand. And the path toward that deeper training, toward the intellectual discipline that shapes young minds, begins to open gently before him. Education in this world begins the moment a child can observe. There are no classrooms marked by walls or benches, no scrolls to unroll, no inked letters to memorize. Instead, knowledge lives in voices, in actions, in the careful repetition of daily tasks. As the boy steps through the doorway of his home, he enters a space alive with lessons, woven into every movement around him. His mother kneels by the grinding stone, guiding his younger sister's small hands as she helps crush grains into fine flour. The steady rhythm of the stone, circle after circle, fills the air with a soft scraping that blends with the household's gentle murmurs. The little girl watches her mother closely, copying the pressure of her palms, learning not only technique, but patience. Domestic arts begin this way, not through instruction delivered sternly, but through shared effort, gentle correction, and the quiet warmth of companionship. Near the hearth, the grandmother tells the girl stories between tasks. These stories are not meant purely for entertainment. They carry layers of meaning folded beneath their simple surfaces. Some explain why certain rituals are performed at dawn. Others speak of the devas through metaphors even young minds can understand. As the grandmother sorts herbs for cooking, she uses each plant to anchor a lesson. How one leaf cools the body, how another soothes the stomach, how another sharpens the senses. The girl listens eagerly, forming her first understanding of healing and household wisdom. Across the room, the boy joins his father for his own portion of daily learning. The father prepares a small corner of the space by laying out a piece of cloth and placing a water pot at its edge. He signals for the boy to sit with his spine straight and his breath steady. Recitation practice begins, not with chanting full hymns, but with shaping the fundamental sounds that give the Vedic verses their power. The father recites a phrase slowly, breaking the chant into syllables. The boy repeats each part, first clumsy, then more confident. The father taps a finger against the ground to guide the rhythm, correcting gently if the boy's intonation wavers. Each morning and evening, these lessons form the backbone of the boy's education, training memory, voice control, breath, and concentration. Between recitations, the father explains the meaning of certain words. He speaks of RTA, cosmic order, and how human life must align with the universe's natural flow. He talks of Dharma, not yet the complex concept it will become in later centuries, but the simpler idea of rightful action, fairness, and duty. The boy listens carefully, absorbing these seeds of philosophy, even if he doesn't yet grasp their full depth. Outside, other families conduct similar lessons. Boys kneel beside fathers or older brothers, practicing chants or learning the physical tasks of farming, herding, or carpentry. Girls sit beside mothers and grandmothers, weaving garlands, shaping clay, or learning the nuance of hospitality, how to greet a guest, how to prepare offerings, how to read subtle shifts in mood. Learning is constant. It occurs in gestures, in tones, in the way a pot is shaped or a prayer is offered. Even play becomes instruction. The children gather near the central space, where they turn stones into imaginary cattle or draw patterns in the dust resembling fire altars. Their games mimic the world they watch each day, laying the groundwork for the roles they will one day assume. In the late afternoon, the Brahmin passes through the village once more, preparing to rest beneath a shaded grove. His presence reminds the boy that education extends beyond the household. It flows through the words of visiting priests, the decisions of the councils, the hymns recited at festivals, and the stories shared by travelers who bring news of distant clans. As evening approaches, the day shifts into a quieter rhythm. The sun lowers toward the horizon, casting golden light across the village. Women carry in the last of the water, animals settle into their enclosures, and cooking fires glow softly from within the round homes. The boy and his sister finish their tasks and join the grandmother outside, where she arranges a few mats on the ground. It is time for the evening storytelling session, a beloved part of village life. Children gather with eager anticipation, knowing that the stories to come will weave together myth, history, wisdom, and wonder. Some tales teach lessons, others entertain, and others offer glimpses into the unseen realms that shape their world. As the first stars begin to appear overhead, the children settle into a semicircle, their faces glowing with expectant curiosity. The grandmother clears her throat softly, readying her voice. And in that tender pause, between the fading light and the beginning of the tale, the path opens naturally toward the myths and legends waiting to unfold in the next chapter. The first stars shimmer like grains of silver scattered across deep blue velvet. A breeze stirs the tamarisk branches, making a soft rustling that blends seamlessly with the crackle of the nearby fire. The grandmother adjusts her shawl, clears her throat gently, and begins in a low, resonant voice. Long before our ancestors walked along the Sarasvati, long before the first seeds were planted in these fields, there was only the endless night and the breath of the cosmic wind. The children lean forward. Even the boy, who has heard these stories many times, feels the familiar pull of wonder. The grandmother's voice is slow, measured, a rhythm shaped to match the fire's steady pulse. She tells them of Indra first, the mighty wielder of the thunderbolt. Her hands mimic the roll of distant thunder. Her voice deepens as she speaks of the great battles in the heavens. She describes how Indra shattered the serpent Vritra, releasing the waters and bringing fertility to the land. The boy imagines the river swelling with new strength, the clouds parting to reveal the golden dawn. The little girl beside him gasps when the grandmother describes the moment Indra's bolt strikes, her fingers slicing the air with a graceful arc. But there is no fear in the child's eyes, only awe. The tale is told in gentle tones, softened by the firelight, the danger and drama tempered into something soothing, almost dreamlike. Next comes Agni, the ever-present guest in every home. The grandmother gestures toward the hearth, its flames dancing softly, and explains how Agni carries every offering, every prayer, from the human realm to the divine. Her voice warms as she speaks of him, protector, messenger, purifier. Even the youngest child understands. Agni's presence is familiar, comforting, always near. The grandmother's voice shifts as she weaves the story of Ushas, the goddess of the dawn. She describes her arrival in delicate strokes, pink light stretching across the sky, dew glistening on grass, birds waking with soft calls. The children grow quiet, almost transfixed, as though the goddess herself might rise from the darkness at any moment. Then come the Ashvins, the divine twins, healers, travelers, rescuers of the lost. Their stories ignite a different kind of excitement. They ride across the sky in a golden chariot, bringing medicines to the sick and guiding wanderers through unknown lands. The boy imagines them as streaks of light racing through the night, swift and benevolent. With each tale, the grandmother's voice grows softer, sinking into a hypnotic cadence. Words drift like smoke, curling around the children's minds, blending the real with the mythical, until the boundary between them becomes beautifully thin. The stars above seem to pulse with each phrase, and the fire crackles as though responding to the stories spoken in its glow. The grandmother soon shifts from gods to ancestors, heroes whose names are carried on the wind, whose deeds shaped the world the children now inhabit. She tells of warriors who defended cattle from raiders, of wise women who healed with herbs gathered under moonlit skies, of travelers who journeyed along rivers to distant lands, returning with stories of forests, mountains, and kingdoms beyond imagination. The boy listens closely. These tales feel different tonight. For the first time, he imagines himself within them, not as a hero of war, but as someone who might someday travel beyond the familiar pastures and fields. He pictures places where the stars look different, where the rivers run in new directions, where other clans build homes unlike their own. Beside him, the smallest children begin to sway gently, their eyes heavy with sleep, but unwilling to close until the final story is told. The grandmother senses the shift and softens her voice even further, letting it fall into a whisper-like rhythm, meant to soothe more than excite. She ends with a gentle tale, one of a young wanderer guided home by the Ashvins after becoming lost in the forest. The message is simple. No journey is taken alone, and the world is filled with unseen helpers. As the story concludes, silence settles like a warm blanket. The children exhale slowly, as though releasing the myths back into the night. A few lie down where they sit, gazing upward at the stars. The boy rests his chin on his knees, his mind drifting through images of gods, glowing chariots, distant horizons, and unfamiliar landscapes. The grandmother extinguishes the small clay lamp beside her and gestures for the children to return to their homes. As they rise and scatter into the darkness, the boy lingers a moment longer, his thoughts carried far beyond the village's familiar boundaries. Stories, he realizes, are maps, guiding the imagination into the world beyond. And as he walks back toward the warm glow of his household fire, the sense of adventure kindled by the tales drifts with him, nudging his thoughts toward the distant paths and wandering traders who move between villages. These dreams of far-off lands and the movement of goods and stories form a natural bridge into the world of travel and trade waiting in the next chapter. The sun rises pale and cool, painting the thatched roofs and packed earth in soft gold. Before the household has fully begun its morning tasks, a faint jingling sound drifts toward the village, the muted rhythmic clink of metal ornaments tied to a walking staff. It is followed by the crunch of steady footsteps approaching along the main path. The boy, already awake and preparing to fetch water, pauses mid-stride. He recognizes the sound. A traveler. A moment later, a trader appears at the edge of the settlement, brushing dust from his shawl as he steps into the open space near the central plaza. His clothing is layered and worn, dyed in colors unfamiliar to the villagers. Deep indigos, burnt reds and faded greens. A strap stretches across his chest, supporting a satchel filled with tightly wrapped bundles. Around his neck hangs a small cluster of trinkets, bone beads, tiny carved wooden discs, bits of polished stone, tokens collected from many journeys. The father approaches first, offering water in greeting. The trader accepts with gratitude, tilting the clay cup back and sighing softly as the cool liquid touches his tongue. His eyes scan the village with a warmth that suggests he has visited before, though seasons may have passed since his last arrival. Children begin to gather, whispering among themselves. Traders are rare guests, and they bring with them the scent of distant lands, forests thick with unknown trees, plains stretching farther than the eye can follow, and villages where customs shift like currents of the river. The boy inches closer, curiosity bright in his eyes. The trader smiles, recognizing that look instantly. From his satchel, he retrieves a small piece of carved shell, shaped into a simple spiral. It glints softly in the sunlight. He places it in the boy's hand. From the river to the east, he says, where the water meets the sea. The boy holds it reverently. To him, the sea is as mythical as the Ashvin's celestial chariot, something spoken of but never seen. Villagers soon gather around the traveler, offering food and a place to sit beneath the shade of the neem tree. As he settles, he begins to recount his journey. His voice is unhurried, the cadence shaped by long hours, spent walking narrow forest paths and sun-baked plains. He speaks first of the rivers that stitch the land together. Traders follow these waterways, using simple rafts or timber boats to move from one settlement to the next. He describes how the Sarasvati curves into tributaries, leading to other rivers where communities thrive on fishing, pottery, and salt harvesting. A few villagers lean in, imagining those distant banks lined with unfamiliar homes. He then speaks of the footpaths, long meandering trails carved by generations of travelers, cattle herders, and migrating clans. These paths wind through thick forests where monkeys chatter in high branches and deer leap through the underbrush. Other stretches cross open plains where the horizon seems endless, broken only by the occasional grove of trees or cluster of wildflowers. Sometimes, he explains, traders travel alone. Other times they move in caravans, especially when carrying valuable goods or crossing lands known for territorial disputes. Caravans offer protection, companionship, and shared knowledge. Each traveler contributes. One knows medicinal herbs, another can read the stars, another recounts news of safe routes or dangerous weather. Together, They form a temporary community that dissolves once each reaches their destination. The trader unties a cloth bundle and reveals his goods: polished cowrie shells that serve as currency in some regions, small vials of fragrant resin from distant trees, beads made of stone not found anywhere near the Sarasvati. He also carries simple tools: bronze needles, fish hooks, and fine thread, items villagers prize for their practicality. As villagers examine the objects with interest, the trader continues speaking of the lands he has crossed. He describes tribes to the west who herd vast cattle populations and practice rituals slightly different from those here. To the north, he says, there are groups who dwell near the foothills of towering mountains where the air is thin and cold. To the south, he has visited settlements skilled in creating intricate woven cloth, dyed with colors deeper than the village has ever seen. The boy listens intently, absorbing every detail. He imagines narrow forest trails, dappled with sunlight, caravans moving like steady rivers of people and animals, and distant villages buzzing with languages slightly different from his own. These stories expand his world far beyond the huts and fields of his home. As midday approaches, the trader's tales turn toward the ways these clans interact, how alliances form, how disputes arise, how goods and stories travel alongside one another. He describes feasts shared between tribes, rituals exchanged, and gifts offered to demonstrate goodwill. He also mentions occasional tensions, disagreements over territory, grazing rights, or water access. These glimpses into the relationships between clans ripple gently through the listening crowd, reminding them that their village is part of a much larger weave of communities, each with its own customs, strengths, and challenges. The boy senses that the trader's stories are leading towards something deeper, not just the movement of goods or the paths through forests and plains, but the connections between people, the bonds that hold tribes together and the careful negotiations that ensure peace. And as the trader prepares to share news of nearby clans and the shifting balance of alliances, the story moves naturally toward the interwoven world of relationships among tribes waiting in the next chapter. The trader begins by describing a feast he attended in a distant settlement, an event held when two clans renewed their friendship after several seasons apart. His voice takes on a warm tone as he recalls the laughter, the generous sharing of food, and the rhythmic clapping that accompanied traditional dances around the fire. The villagers lean closer, knowing such gatherings bind much more than simple agreements. They stitch trust into the fabric of relationships that must endure droughts, migrations, and the uncertainties of nature. In Vedic society, diplomacy is not a written contract, but a lived ritual. When clans meet, the first gesture is always hospitality. A guest, whether friend, stranger, or messenger, is seated, offered food, and given fresh water to wash hands and feet. Hospitality is not a courtesy, it is a moral obligation, a reflection of dharma in daily life. The trader explains how offerings vary from place to place. Some clans present bowls of sweetened milk, others offer roasted grains, while those near forests may present fruits gathered at dawn. The boy imagines arriving at a distant settlement as the traveler describes it. Warm smiles greeting him, a cup placed in his hands, questions asked about his journey with genuine interest. Hospitality, he realizes, is a language all its own, understood even when words differ. The trader unwraps a small carved wooden box from his satchel, its lid engraved with spiraling lines. He explains that it was a gift from a chieftain whose clan he visited 2 moons ago. In return, he offered a woven cloth dyed with natural pigments from his homeland. Gifts like these are not chosen randomly. Each item carries symbolic weight: wood, carved from a clan's sacred grove; cloth dyed with colors representing prosperity or peace; cattle given as tokens of alliance. These offerings remind each party of the relationship, giving tangible form to the bond. The villagers murmur appreciatively as they take turns examining the box, The grandmother traces the carvings with her fingertips, noting the precision. The children whisper guesses about the stories hidden in the spirals. The father nods thoughtfully, recognizing the value of such exchanges in maintaining harmony across the land. The trader then speaks of rituals shared between clans, simple ceremonies performed to reinforce peace. One involves the lighting of a joint fire, symbolizing unity under Agni's watchful presence. Each group adds a small bundle of herbs or grains from their own homeland to the flames, letting the smoke carry their goodwill upward. Another ritual involves tying threads of dyed cotton around each other's wrists, silent promises woven into color. These ceremonies are gentle, intimate moments of diplomacy. They remind the participants that their lives are intertwined, that harmony is a mutual responsibility. The boy imagines the flicker of shared flames, the scents of herbs mingling, the quiet strength of two leaders binding their clans in respect. The trader's tone shifts as he begins describing occasions when alliances are tested. Disputes can arise over grazing pastures, water rights, or the movement of herds between territories. Yet even conflict follows ritualized steps. Elders from both sides meet beneath the open sky, each bringing gifts symbolic of neutrality. Words are exchanged calmly, even when tensions run high. The goal is not victory, but resolution. The trader notes that violence is rare. The cost of broken trust is too great. Villagers nod as they listen. They know that maintaining peace requires effort from every household. They understand that their own prosperity depends not just on rainfall or harvests, but on the invisible threads linking them to others across the plains and forests. As the trader continues, his stories begin to drift inward, away from external alliances, and toward the ways relationships within a clan shape daily life. The boy notices this shift, feeling it settle gently over the gathering like the first cool breeze of evening. The trader speaks of how internal order mirrors the diplomacy between clans, fairness in sharing resources, respect between generations, and the subtle structure of roles that keep the village balanced. These internal patterns, built from custom, tradition, and unwritten rules, are the foundation that allows a clan to interact harmoniously with others. Without internal order, alliances cannot hold. Without respect within households, hospitality cannot be sincere. Without shared understanding of duty and place, a clan cannot speak with one voice in times of need. The boy senses this lesson strongly. He glances at his father, at the elders listening nearby, at the children gathered in a semicircle, the way his village lives each day, cooperating, sharing, listening, is reflected on a larger scale between clans. Harmony begins at home. As the trader folds his satchel and prepares to rest for the night, the villagers feel the natural close of his stories. The sun has begun its descent, scattering long shadows across the plaza. The trader's tales linger in the air, shaping the boy's understanding of how relationships sustain life across the vast land. And as thoughts turn toward the structure of roles and responsibilities within the clan itself, the story gently opens the path toward understanding the social order that will guide the next chapter. The morning after the trader's arrival dawns softly, with a sky the color of pale ash and the smell of damp earth rising from the ground. The village begins to stir once more. Cooking fires are lit, animals are fed, and families prepare for another day of labor. The boy, now more aware of how each action connects to a larger pattern, watches the village come alive with a keen sense of curiosity. He begins to notice the distinctions within the settlement, not divisions of worth or status, but different kinds of work unfolding with subtle coordination. The grandmother sorts herbs with practiced fingers, already organizing ingredients for healing poultices. The metalsmith stokes his furnace. The potter begins shaping a bowl from cool clay. The farmers gather tools for tending the fields. All these tasks, so varied yet so interdependent, form the rhythm of daily life. These patterns reflect what elders sometimes call vana, the early framework of social roles. The boy understands that outsiders often misunderstand this idea in later ages, imagining it as a rigid structure of birth and hierarchy. But here, in its earliest form, vana is fluid, shaped by skill, inclination, and the needs of the community. The father explains it gently as they prepare their morning tools. In our world, he says, tightening a leather strap on the plow, people take on roles the village requires. Some tend the soil, some guide rituals, some create tools, some protect the clan. Each path is different, but none stands above another. The boy nods. He has seen this with his own eyes. An artisan's son may choose to work in the fields. The grandson of a farmer can become a Brahmin if he shows discipline in recitation. A healer's daughter may learn the craft of pottery if she wishes. The idea is not to confine, but to maintain balance, ensuring that each necessary task is carried out by someone capable and willing. The grandmother reinforces this lesson later that day when she invites the girl to learn more about medicinal plants. In my youth, she says, sorting leaves and roots into tidy piles, I spent years with a woman who shaped clay into cups and jars. I learned her craft well. But when her sister fell ill, I found I had a talent for healing. The village needed a healer, so I became one. Roles change when hearts and hands change. The girl listens intently, absorbing not just the knowledge of herbs, but the idea that life's path is not fixed in stone. Nearby, a group of young men prepare for training in physical arts, running exercises with short wooden spears, learning protective maneuvers, and practicing the discipline needed to defend the clan if necessary. They are not warriors by birth, but by ability and choice. Some will return to farming, others may serve as scouts or protectors for trade caravans. Vana here is more a reflection of one's strengths than an unchanging identity. The Brahmin, resting beneath the tree after his morning rituals, watches with a serene expression. He later explains to a few listening children that knowledge itself is not restricted to one group. If you cultivate curiosity, he says, you can learn the hymns. If you cultivate strength, you can become a protector. If you cultivate patience, you can become a craftsman. If you cultivate compassion, you can become a healer. The gods do not choose one path for you. You choose it for yourself. This perspective brings clarity to the boy. He begins to understand how the village functions smoothly. Each person contributes according to skill, interest, and necessity. No task is too small. No role is without dignity. A potter's hands shape the vessels that hold sacred offerings. A farmer's strength feeds the community. A herder's care protects the wealth of cattle. A Brahmin's memory safeguards the hymns that preserve tradition. He looks around the village with new eyes. He sees how the variety of roles creates interdependence, how cooperation forms the invisible backbone of their society. The boy realizes that though each household appears separate, they are all bound by shared work, shared learning, shared duties. As the day stretches into the warm afternoon, the boy notices how the community's roles influence the movement of labor. The potter's finished vessels are exchanged for milk. The metalsmith's tools find their way into farmers' hands. The healer's herbs are given freely, with gratitude returned through food or labor. The rhythm flows without friction, like water weaving through the reeds. Late in the day, the father walks the boy past the grazing fields, pointing out the different groups working across the settlement. Tomorrow, he says, you will help me repair the irrigation trenches. Your sister will help your mother shape grain cakes. Each task belongs to someone, but all tasks belong to the clan. The boy feels a sense of belonging settle deep within him. Varna, he realizes, is not a cage. It is a pattern, one that helps the village thrive, one that adapts as people grow and change. As evening approaches and the fires begin to glow once more, the varied tasks of the day naturally remind the boy of the work waiting in the morning. The connection between personal skill and communal need becomes clearer, leading his thoughts gently toward the crafts and labors that shape material life. And as the village settles into twilight, the story flows naturally toward the world of artisans, tools, and daily craftsmanship waiting in the next chapter. The heart of the village hums with the sound of creation. As the boy approaches the central area, he sees the potter already at work, his fingers glistening with wet clay. The wheel beneath him spins in slow, steady circles, the rhythm kept by his foot, pressing lightly on the wooden pedal. Each rotation reveals new possibilities, bowls widening gracefully, jars rising toward the potter's palms, as if responding to a silent call. Clay dust floats in the warm light, settling on the potter's arms. His touch is gentle yet precise, molding the vessel's curve with a kind of reverence. The boy watches, mesmerized by the transformation, the way a shapeless mound becomes a symmetrical vessel capable of holding milk, grain, or even sacred offerings. The scent of wet earth mixes with the faint smoke drifting from nearby hearths, creating a comforting, grounded aroma. A few steps away, the weaver sits beneath a shaded awning, her loom stretched tightly, with threads dyed in muted blues and warm ochres. Her fingers move with quiet confidence, passing the shuttle back and forth in a swift, fluid motion. Each strand falls into place with a soft click, forming patterns reminiscent of river currents or shifting sands. She hums as she works, a gentle melodic tune that mirrors the steady beat of her weaving. Her cloth is not merely functional, it carries story and artistry. The patterns symbolize harvest, protection, or the harmony of the clan. The boy marvels at how the threads, seemingly fragile on their own, gain strength and purpose when interwoven, much like the roles within the village. Nearby, the air grows warmer as he approaches the metalworker's corner. Here, the forge glows with a vibrant orange core, the heat radiating outward in waves. The metalsmith, bare-armed and focused, grips his hammer firmly. Each strike against the anvil rings through the settlement with a sharp, resonant tone, steady, purposeful, almost musical in its own right. Sparks leap into the air with each blow, scattering briefly before fading against the clay floor. The boy watches as a glowing piece of bronze slowly takes shape, a knife blade perhaps, or a farming tool. The metalworker pauses occasionally to reheat the metal, plunging it into the heart of the coals before continuing to mold it. The smell of heated metal rises in the air, sharp but strangely invigorating. A young apprentice fans the coals, beads of sweat trickling down his forehead. He glances at the master's movements, mimicking the posture, the timing, the strength. Just as the boy learns chants and recitations through repetition, the apprentice learns the language of fire and metal through observation and practice. Knowledge flows through generations, a continuous cycle shaped by patient hands. The boy moves from one artisan to another, absorbing the details, the textures, the scents, the rhythms. He begins to see the village not just as a place of homes and fields, but as a living workshop where every craft supports another. The potter's vessels store the grain grown by farmers. The weaver's cloth protects the metalworker from sparks. The metalworker's tools cut the wood used to shape the potter's wheel. Creation moves in circles, mirroring the cycle of seasons and rituals. The grandmother joins him for a moment, her eyes surveying the scene with quiet pride. "Craft is prayer in motion," she murmurs. "These hands," she gestures toward the artisans, "build the world we live in, not by magic, but by patience and devotion." The boy nods, feeling a deeper respect settle into him. He realizes that the beauty of the village lies not in grand monuments or elaborate displays, but in the humble mastery of everyday craft. Every pot, every cloth, every tool carries the imprint of someone's dedication. As he turns back toward the forge, he notices the metalsmith beginning work on something different. The bronze is shaped not into a tool this time, but into the beginnings of a blade with a tapered edge and a decorated hilt. The boy recognizes its purpose, a dagger or short sword, meant not only for protection, but also for ritual significance. The flames brighten, casting long shadows. The ring of the hammer deepens, echoing with a sense of gravity. The boy watches closely, sensing that this craft holds stories of its own, stories of chariots, hunters and protectors who rely on well-forged metal to keep the community safe. And as the glow of the forge intensifies, it leads his thoughts naturally toward the world of tools and weaponry, how they are shaped, why they matter, and what role they play in the village's survival. The steady rhythm of the hammer becomes the quiet bridge guiding the story toward the next chapter, where the craft of metallurgy and the shaping of weapons await. The forge crackles with new intensity as the metalsmith feeds more charcoal into its heart. The bronze resting on the anvil glows a deep orange, soft enough to bend, yet strong enough to resist careless blows. Each strike from the hammer coaxes it closer to its intended shape. The boy watches closely, understanding now that what emerges from the fire is not merely an object, but the product of skill, patience, and knowledge, passed through countless hands. Tools and weapons begin in the same place: fire, metal, and intent. Bronze is the lifeblood of this workshop, a metal made by blending copper with a small amount of tin. The metalsmith explains that the right mixture yields strength and flexibility, qualities needed for plow blades, sickles, arrowheads, and ceremonial daggers alike. Too much tin makes the metal brittle, too little leaves it soft. The boy listens carefully, appreciating how even the tiniest measure can determine success or failure. Nearby, a small pile of stones rests on a mat, samples of ore gathered from riverbanks and traded from distant settlements. The metalsmith speaks of new experiments some clans have begun attempting with iron, a metal much harder to work than bronze. He holds up a dark, rough chunk of iron-bearing stone and taps it with his hammer. The sound is dull, heavier than the ring of bronze. "Someday," he murmurs, "when we learn its secrets, this metal will change everything. But for now, it resists us." The boy runs his fingers across the cold, grainy surface of the ironstone. It feels ancient, unyielding, a reminder that progress arrives slowly, shaped by countless trials. Bronze still rules the forge, for tools, for ornaments, for weapons. Behind the metalsmith, several finished items lie on a reed mat. There are broad sickles, with gently curved blades designed for cutting tall grasses. Slender knives, used for carving wood and preparing food. And arrowheads, mounted onto straight wooden shafts. The boy picks one up carefully, its edges sharp, its weight balanced, its craftsmanship precise. But the most captivating piece rests on a low rack beside the forge, a spearhead with a long elegant point and a central ridge crafted to add strength. This weapon, destined for the clan's protectors, gleams faintly as though lit from within. The boy imagines it catching sunlight during a hunt, or being held aloft in a ceremony where the clan honors its guardians. Beyond the forge, another world of craft hums with life. A carpenter works beneath a tamarind tree, shaping wood with a bronze-tipped adze. The rhythmic scrapings of his tool create soft curls of fragrant wood that fall to the ground like shavings of pale ribbon. The carpenter fashions everything from yokes to door frames, but today, his focus is on something far more impressive, the components of a chariot. The boy approaches quietly, watching as the carpenter fits curved wooden pieces together to form a wheel. The spokes, slim but sturdy, radiate from the hub with perfect symmetry. The rim is shaped from a single piece of wood, heated and bent into a circle, its smooth surface glowing with fresh polish. The carpenter explains that chariots are more than vehicles. They are symbols of nobility, speed and precision. They require close collaboration. Woodworkers to create the frame, metalsmiths to forge the fittings, leatherworkers to craft the harnesses, and even weavers to wrap parts of the structure for shock absorption. The father joins the boy, placing a hand on his shoulder as they admire the craftsmanship. A chariot, he says quietly, is a thing of balance. Too heavy, and it cannot fly across the plains. Too light, and it breaks beneath its rider. It is a lesson in harmony. The boy studies the nearly finished wheel, imagining it rolling across open fields, carrying a skilled driver at remarkable speeds. The thought fills him with excitement. He realizes that crafting such a vehicle demands not only skill, but an understanding of movement, strength, and the natural world. The chariot embodies everything the village values: craft, cooperation, precision, and purpose. As the metalsmith quenches the finished blade in a pot of cool water, steam rises with a soft hiss, curling upward like a spirit leaving the metal. The boy watches the blade's surface harden and darken slightly, its final form complete. The metalsmith inspects it closely, running a thumb along the polished edge, nodding with satisfaction. This process, from ore to flame to tool or weapon, feels almost ceremonial. It carries with it the quiet knowledge that these creations will shape the village's future. Tools sustaining life, weapons protecting it, chariots extending its reach into the wider world. Even as the forge cools and workers gather their tools, the carpenter continues working on the chariot's frame. The boy remains close, drawn to the elegant curve of its body, the smoothness of the finished wheel, the ingenious ways wood and metal merge. And as the afternoon light deepens into gold, the chariot, half assembled, half potential, stands as a silent promise of movement, speed, and prestige. Its presence invites the story forward, guiding the boy's imagination toward the world of those who ride these remarkable vehicles and the power and status they hold. A gentle anticipation begins to form, leading naturally toward the next chapter, where the chariot and its significance will take center stage. The chariot appears between the trees in a burst of motion, horses trotting proudly, harness bells jingling lightly, wheels cutting smooth arcs in the dust. The boy inhales sharply. This is no simple transport wagon, and certainly not a tool of everyday labor. This is a nobleman's chariot, finely crafted and beautifully maintained, gliding across the path with effortless grace. 2 horses lead the vehicle, their manes braided and adorned with polished beads that catch the late sun. Their coats shine with careful grooming, each step confident and light. Behind them stands the chariot itself, a structure of curved wood, reinforced with bronze fittings, its surface decorated with patterns representing clan lineage and ancestral valor. The nobleman, standing tall at the helm, guides the reins with practiced ease. His posture is steady, balanced, and commanding. Chariots demand a particular kind of mastery. One must learn to work in with the horses, the terrain, and the shifting weight of the vehicle. The boy watches in awe as the nobleman slows the horses with a gentle pull and brings the chariot to stop near the village center. Dust swirls around the wheels before settling. For a moment, the chariot stands completely still, like a statue carved from wood and metal. but the energy of its arrival lingers, taut and vibrant. Villagers gather, offering greetings with a respectful bow. The nobleman steps down, his clothing marked with subtle embroidery, his bronze ornaments gleaming faintly. He exchanges polite words with the elders before turning to inspect the village's craftsmanship, the pottery, the woven cloth, the new bronze tools. But it is clear that his chariot draws the greatest attention. Children, including the boy, inch closer, unable to resist the temptation to examine it up close. The nobleman notices and smiles. With a gesture, he invites them nearer. The boy steps forward, his heart quickening as he reaches out to touch the smooth rim of the wheel. The wood is warm from the sun, the metal fittings cool beneath his fingers. The nobleman speaks softly, explaining that a chariot is not simply built, it is maintained with devotion. Each morning and evening, the wheel axles must be oiled using a blend of resin and animal fat. The leather straps must be kept supple, inspected for wear, and replaced before they weaken. The bronze fittings must be polished to prevent corrosion. Even the horses have rituals: grooming, feeding, blessing with sacred herbs during long journeys. Their upkeep is more than practical necessity. It is ceremony. A nobleman's chariot is a statement of identity, lineage, and capability. It must reflect the rider's discipline and honor. The father listens intently, occasionally nodding with understanding. He knows that the chariot symbolizes more than mobility. It is a mark of prestige, often reserved for leaders, messengers, and those entrusted with protecting the clan. Its appearance in the village is rare and meaningful. The nobleman opens a small chest fixed to the rear of the chariot, revealing spare bolts, polished bronze blades, and carefully wrapped tools for roadside repairs. Everything is arranged with meticulous precision. The boy stares in wonder at the miniature toolkit, imagining how swiftly and skillfully the nobleman must react when traveling through uncertain terrain. As the afternoon light deepens, the nobleman shares stories of his journey, passing through forests where wild boar roam, crossing rivers swollen with monsoon runoff, navigating through grasslands where sudden storms sweep across the plains. Each tale emphasizes the importance of preparation, vigilance, and unity between charioteer and horses. The horses snort softly, as though acknowledging their part in these adventures. The boy approaches them cautiously, placing a hand on one animal's strong, warm neck. The nobleman nods approvingly. "You treat a horse with respect," he says, "not fear." The boy's heart swells with pride at the gentle praise. As villagers gather offerings of food and drink for their guest, the nobleman shifts the conversation toward the purpose of his travels. He speaks of rising tensions between two clans to the north, disputes over grazing lands, and the need for skilled mediators. His chariot, swift and reliable, allows him to move between settlements to maintain peace and deliver urgent messages. The tone of the gathering grows more contemplative. The boy senses a subtle shift, one that acknowledges the fragility of harmony and the need for protection, readiness, and diplomacy. The nobleman's presence embodies both prestige and responsibility. His chariot, elegant as it is, also hints at the reality of conflict and the tools necessary to safeguard the clan. As the nobleman accepts his place near the fire for the evening meal, the chariot rests nearby, its polished surface catching the glow of twilight. The boy sits on the ground with his family, stealing glances at the wheels and bronze fittings. He feels it clearly now. The chariot is not merely a marvel of craft. It is a reminder that the peaceful rhythm of village life exists alongside the ever-present need for guardianship. And as night settles in, thoughts turn naturally toward the world beyond prestige and craftsmanship. The world where protection, conflict, and warrior duties shape the lives of those who defend the clan. From the silent, gleaming chariot, the path leads smoothly into the next chapter, where the realities of conflict and safeguarding the community begin to unfold. Dawn arrives quietly the next morning. The nobleman prepares his horses, inspecting their hooves, brushing their coats, and murmuring soft words of thanks for their service. His movements draw a small crowd, children, elders, and curious villagers who sense that his visit will soon come to an end. But before he departs, the nobleman gathers the young men and several elders beneath the shade of the neem tree to discuss a matter that weighs on many clans: the management of conflict. The boy stands at the edge of the gathering, listening. The nobleman begins by explaining that most disputes among clans arise not from malice, but from necessity. Grazing lands overlapping during drought, rivers shifting course, or herds wandering across territorial lines. Cattle raids, he notes, are sometimes acts of desperation rather than aggression. Yet even in conflict, there are rules, ancient codes shaped by honor, fairness, and the desire to avoid bloodshed whenever possible. He describes how scouts are trained to observe the land, noticing signs of movement or changes in the patterns of herds. Their job is not to provoke but to warn, giving the clan time to negotiate or prepare. The boy imagines these scouts moving silently across the plains at dawn, listening to the calls of birds and watching for distant dust that might signal approaching herders. When disputes cannot be avoided, the nobleman says, the first step is always dialogue. Elders meet beneath open skies, agreeing upon neutral ground where both groups can speak without fear. Offerings of milk, grain, or water are exchanged to signify goodwill. Words flow slowly, measured carefully, with each leader acknowledging the other's concerns. In most cases, this is enough. Agreements are reached, grazing boundaries adjusted, and peace restored. But sometimes, he continues, a clan may refuse negotiation, believing that taking cattle by force will strengthen their position. In such cases, the defending clan relies on strategy rather than fury. Chariots, swift and maneuverable, play an important role. They are not meant for destruction, but for deterrence. A rider who can circle a raiding group and cut off escape routes often forces the aggressors to reconsider their actions without a single blow exchanged. The nobleman describes a recent situation where he and 2 other charioteers intercepted a group attempting to drive away cattle under cover of dusk. By maneuvering their chariots in a crescent formation, they guided the raiders back toward their own territory without injury to either side. Force, he says gently, is a last resort. Skill and understanding do far more to preserve peace. The boy listens with wide eyes, realizing just how much discipline and restraint define true strength. The nobleman also speaks of the spiritual dimension of conflict. Before any protective action is taken, rituals are performed, small offerings to Agni for clarity, prayers to Indra for courage and fairness, and silent reflection, guided by the belief that all life carries divine spark. These rituals remind warriors that their purpose is not domination, but safeguarding the harmony entrusted to them. He explains that even after a conflict, sacred rites are held. Cattle are blessed. Boundaries are purified with water from the river, and both clans are encouraged to send neutral messengers to restore communication. In this way, disputes that once caused strain can eventually strengthen relationships by demonstrating mutual respect. The father adds his own experience, speaking softly about years when grazing lands ran thin. He tells the young listeners that peace must be tended like a field, nurtured, watered, and protected from neglect. He emphasizes that the greatest leaders are those who prevent conflict before it arises, not those who win it. The nobleman nods in agreement. He then discusses the role of young people, the ones who will grow into guardians, negotiators, and elders. He stresses that understanding the reasons behind conflict, the strategies used to avoid harm, and the rituals that bind communities together is essential for anyone who wishes to serve the clan honorably. The boy feels these words settle into him like seeds. He sees for the first time that the world's stability depends on knowledge, patience, and fairness, more than on weapons or displays of power. As the morning light brightens and preparations for the nobleman's departure begin, the boy notices the elders speaking quietly about upcoming meetings with neighboring clans. They review recent rains, cattle movements, and harvest conditions, all part of the ongoing effort to keep relations smooth. The nobleman mounts his chariot once more, offering blessings to the villagers before guiding his horses onto the path that leads toward distant settlements. The wheels turn, kicking up soft trails of dust, carrying with them the weight of responsibility and the hope of continued peace. The boy watches him disappear between the trees, his mind full of new understanding, and as the village settles into its daily rhythm again, thoughts shift naturally from the strategies of peace to the structures that uphold it. Discussions linger in the air about fairness, dispute resolution, and the moral foundations that guide decisions. These reflections open the way toward the next subject, the systems of justice and law that help keep the community in balance. Two villagers stand near the grain hut, speaking with raised but controlled voices. Nothing about their argument feels dangerous, no aggression, no threats, just the sharp edge of frustration between people who share daily spaces and responsibilities. One accuses the other of taking more than his allotted portion of barley. The other insists the grain was his own, carried there the day before during a sudden rain. A few villagers gather, observing quietly. No one rushes to escalate, no one seeks to shame either party. Instead, the elders approach with slow, deliberate steps, their presence enough to calm the air. Justice in this community is not a separate institution, but an extension of everyday relationship, settled not in cold halls, but beneath the open sky, where everyone feels seen and heard. The boy and his sister stand a short distance away, watching as the elders invite both men to sit on the ground. Sitting, the father once said, lowers the heat of the heart and steadies the breath. The accused and the accuser obey, settling cross-legged while the eldest woman of the clan takes her place between them. She begins with questions, not sharp interrogations but gentle prompts. Tell us, she says softly, what you believe happened. Each man speaks in turn, their words unbroken by interruptions. When emotions rise, a quiet gesture from the elders steadies them. Listening comes first, judgment later. Another elder asks witnesses to share what they saw the day before. A young girl recalls the rainstorm and seeing someone hurrying to cover their grain basket, but she cannot remember who. A farmer mentions helping one of the men carry a heavy sack earlier that week. A few nod, piecing together small fragments. The grandmother leans forward, touching the storage basket lightly. And this grain, she asks, does it bear marks? The villagers know each household decorates their sacks differently. Patterns pressed into the clay seals, threads tied around the opening. When they inspect the bundle in question, they find a faint clay impression shaped like a crescent, a symbol used by the accused man's family. There is a soft ripple through the onlookers. The detail doesn't prove guilt or innocence, but it offers clarity. More importantly, it allows both parties to step back from their positions without losing dignity. The eldest woman turns to the accused. Do you believe this was your grain? He hesitates, then nods slowly. It seems so. The accuser looks embarrassed, running a hand across his forehead. Then I spoke too quickly, he murmurs. The storm confused me. The tension melts. No one mocks him. No one scolds. The elders simply guide both men to acknowledge what occurred. Mistakes are accepted, truth is shared, and the goal remains harmony, not triumph. Still, tradition requires an oath, a small ritual to reaffirm trust. The grandmother brings a bowl of water from the river and places it between the two men. Both dip their fingers into it, letting droplets fall back into the bowl. In the sight of Agni and under the witness of our ancestors, the eldest elder intones, let this water carry away misunderstanding. Let your words return to balance. Both men repeat a short vow of goodwill. When they rise, they touch each other's forearms in a gesture of restored trust. The crowd disperses with smiles and soft conversation. Children resume play, women return to their work, and the ordinary rhythm of life flows again. The boy watches with quiet admiration. He sees now that justice in his clan is not about punishment, but about restoring the delicate threads that tie everyone together. It is a form of healing, like resetting a bone so it may grow strong again. As the elders walk away, the boy's sister tugs at his hand, urging him toward home. The smell of warm grain cakes drifts from their doorway, and the soft sound of their mother preparing the hearth welcomes them back into the domestic world, where meals, stories, and shared evenings sustain the spirit just as much as fairness sustains the community. The boy steps inside, feeling the peace restored outside reflected in the gentle glow of the home's fire. And as the family gathers for the evening meal, the story moves naturally inward once more, toward the spaces of warmth, routine, and love that define life in a Vedic household, opening the way for the next chapter's exploration of the home. Inside the house, the day's final tasks unfold in soft, deliberate motions. The family lives in a round, thatched roof dwelling with packed earth floors and walls smoothed with a mixture of clay and cow dung that keeps the space cool during the day and warm at night. The hearth rests at the center, a shallow pit lined with stones, where the embers glow with a steady orange light. The boy's mother kneels beside the grinding stone, a large flat slab with a rounded top stone. She turns in steady circles. Grain spills in a small pile beside her, ready to be transformed. As she grinds, the kernels crack and release their hearty scent, filling the room with a warm, earthy aroma. The sound is soothing, a rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape that rises and falls like a whispered chant. Nearby, his sister gathers dried cow dung patties stacked neatly against the wall, chosen carefully for the night's cooking fire. She arranges them near the hearth with practiced ease. When one patty catches flame, it burns slow and steady, giving off a clean warmth, ideal for simmering food without smoke choking the air. A small clay pot sits on the hearth, bubbling gently with barley gruel. The mother lifts the lid, releasing a fragrant cloud of steam that smells of toasted grain and river salt. She stirs the pot with a wooden spoon carved by the father, who now sits repairing a woven basket in the corner. He pulls stray fibers tight with deft fingers, securing the basket for another season of carrying vegetables, herbs, or foraged greens. The grandmother tends to another pot, where she simmers a mixture of butter churned earlier that morning. She skims off foam with slow, graceful movements, letting the liquid thicken and clarify into ghee. The scent of warming butter mingles with the barley gruel, creating a rich, comforting blend that fills every corner of the home. The golden layer that separates toward the end glows brightly in the firelight, a small treasure of flavor and nourishment. The boy watches closely as she pours the ghee through a cloth into a bowl. The clarified liquid catches the fire's reflection, shining like melted sunlight. It will be used for offerings, cooking, and even small ailments, rubbed gently on sore joints or mixed with herbs for healing. In another corner of the home, the father pulls out fresh mats woven from reeds. He shakes them gently to loosen any dust before laying them on the floor. These mats serve as seats for meals and beds at night. The boy rolls out a thicker mat, a family heirloom woven by his grandmother when she was young, with striped patterns, dyed with roots and flower pigments. It smells faintly of sun-dried grass and warm afternoons. Next to the mats, clay cups and small bowls are arranged in neat stacks. Each piece is handmade by the village potter, their surfaces etched with simple geometric designs. The boy's mother uses one to pour fresh water she fetched earlier from the river. The coolness of the water balances the warmth of the hearth, creating a sense of harmony within the home. As the gruel thickens, the mother sprinkles in crushed herbs, small fragments of cumin and wild greens gathered earlier in the day. The aroma deepens, savory and calming. The girl helps by grinding a pinch of salt between her fingers, letting it fall into the pot like scattered flakes of white earth. Above them, strings of dried vegetables hang from the ceiling beams, onions, garlic, and clusters of beans strung together with twine. These small touches turn the home into a place of abundance, reminding the family of seasons past and the coming harvest. The boy takes a small clay ladle and carefully tastes the gruel, blowing on the spoon before placing it on his tongue. The flavor is simple but satisfying, warm, hearty, familiar. His mother smiles at his nod of approval. As they prepare the bowls for the evening meal, the sounds of the village drift around them, the low murmur of neighbors finishing their chores, the soft clinking of pots, and the distant calls of cattle settling for the night. Everything feels stitched together by routine, yet never dull, each day holding its own quiet beauty. The grandmother begins arranging ingredients for the next day's meals. Small piles of lentils, dried fruits, herbs bundled with twine. The boy helps by sorting grains into baskets, noticing how each type smells slightly different from the next. Some sharp and nutty, others sweet and mellow. Food here is more than sustenance. It is memory, ritual, offering, and comfort. The preparation itself carries meaning, touching every part of life from dawn to dusk. As the family gathers around the hearth, their simple bowls of gruel warming their hands, the boy feels a wave of gratitude for the tasks that keep their home whole. Grinding, cooking, weaving, storing, all the quiet labors that bind a family together. And as they begin to eat, the boy's thoughts drift naturally toward the flavors, ingredients, and customs that shape their meals. This gentle focus on food, born from the heart of the home, opens the path toward the next chapter, an exploration of Vedic cuisine in all its modest richness. The next morning begins with the familiar scent of warm milk rising from a clay pot. The boy awakens slowly, drawn by the gentle bubbling sound. His mother stands at the hearth, adding a pinch of fresh herbs to the milk as it heats. Outside, the cattle have been milked at dawn, their warm breath still visible in the cool morning air. Dairy is central to the family's diet. Milk, curds, buttermilk, and ghee, all flowing seamlessly into daily meals. Breakfast is simple: a bit of leftover gruel softened with warm milk, a handful of crushed nuts gathered from the forest, and a drizzle of honey. Honey is rare enough to be precious, but common enough to be familiar, harvested by brave villagers who climb tall trees or track wild hives hidden in rocky crevices. The sweetness brightens the morning, filling the boy with energy as he steps outside to greet the day. As the sun rises, the village's culinary rhythm begins anew. Women sort millets spread out on reed mats, tiny pale grains that roll like sand between their fingers. Barley, the most common staple, sits in baskets waiting to be ground or roasted. Little by little, rice is beginning to appear in some villages, carried from warmer regions to the east, but it is still a novelty here, used sparingly for special occasions or rituals. By midday, the air is rich with aromas drifting from many hearths. Lentils simmer with herbs. Leafy greens gathered from the riverside wilt gently in clay pots. Beans stew in water flavored with garlic and a touch of salt. The smells mingle, earthy, warm, nourishing. The boy accompanies his grandmother to the fruit trees near the settlement. She picks wild berries and plums, placing each gently into her woven basket. Fruits are eaten fresh when found, but many are dried for later seasons, strung above the hearth to absorb smoke and warmth. When the family returns home, the father prepares a small offering plate, milk, grains, and a bit of ghee, to place by the hearth before the midday meal. These offerings honor Agni and the ancestors, acknowledging that food is more than nourishment. It is gratitude made tangible. The midday meal is simple but hearty. The millets are boiled with chopped greens, forming a soft porridge. A dollop of fresh curd sits atop each bowl. The family eats slowly, savoring the balance of flavors. The slight bitterness of greens softened by the creaminess of curd. The grains' wholesome warmth. Some days bring something special. Freshly churned butter spread on warm flatbread, or barley cakes roasted on hot stones. Other days bring sweet treats. Crushed sesame seeds mixed with honey to form small balls, eaten quickly before they soften in the heat. Festive meals, however, are another world entirely. During festivals or gatherings with other clans, the hearths burn brighter and longer. Pots grow larger, spices more plentiful. Milk is boiled into thick, sweet mixtures, flavored with cardamom-like herbs. Barley is roasted with honey to create crunchy treats, shared among children. Villagers prepare a dish of mixed legumes and vegetables cooked slowly until the flavors merge into something rich and celebratory. At feasts, the community sits in circles, sharing from common bowls. No one eats alone. Songs accompany the meal, stories weave between bites, and laughter fills the air like incense. These gatherings mark harvests, births, victories, or celestial events. Food becomes blessing, joy, memory. Equally important are the periods of fasting, observed for ritual cleansing or before significant ceremonies. During fasts, meals are simple, often limited to milk, fruits, or light porridge. The purpose is not deprivation, but clarity, an offering of restraint to the gods, and an opportunity for introspection. The boy has fasted only once, guided gently by his grandmother. He remembers the sensation, the hunger passing like waves, replaced by a strange calmness that sharpened his awareness of the world. Fasting, she explained, teaches humility and strengthens the resolve. As the sun begins to set, the family gathers again for the evening meal. The flavors of the day, milk, herbs, grains, fruits, combine to form a picture of their world. Simple, balanced, and rooted in the rhythms of land and season. The boy looks around the hearth at his mother stirring the pot, his father arranging bowls, his sister laying out mats. He sees how meals draw them together, how daily food shapes their bonds, how feasts strengthen their ties to the community, and how fasting connects them to the divine. He realizes that the true flavor of their cuisine is not found in any specific grain or spice, but in the shared hands that prepare it, the shared breaths that bless it, and the shared voices that laugh and speak around it. And as the family settles into place for their evening meal, the boy becomes aware of something deeper, the way food reflects the structure of the household itself. Who cooks, who serves, who leads, who learns, and how love flows between them. These reflections carry the story naturally toward the next chapter, where the structure and bonds of the Vedic family come into full focus. The next morning rises with a soft hush, the kind of dawn where the village seems to stretch its limbs slowly. As the boy steps outside, he watches his father speaking with the neighboring elder, discussing cattle movements and plans for the next communal gathering. His sister helps their mother string dried herbs above the doorway. The grandmother sits on a low stool, braiding her hair before beginning her chores. These scenes, simple and familiar, form the backbone of life in the Vedic world. Not grand events, but the steady weaving of kinship ties. Family is the first teacher, the first community, the first source of identity. The household does not end with the parents and children. It extends to grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, and even close family friends who have long shared work and shelter. A home is not a private bubble but part of a larger organism, the clan. The boy's grandmother holds a central role within this structure. Elders are the anchors of knowledge, memory, and guidance. She teaches stories, herbal wisdom, seasonal rituals, and household customs. Her quiet authority shapes the rhythm of each day. The children know to go to her when they have questions about the world or the gods, or even their own dreams. Her presence brings continuity, linking past generations to the present. His father represents another kind of strength, the role of protector, provider, and mediator. He is often called upon during disputes between neighbors, not because he seeks leadership, but because he embodies fairness. His mother, in turn, keeps the heart of the home steady. Her labor, cooking, cleaning, managing the hearth, guiding the younger ones, forms the grounding foundation upon which all other work depends. Her responsibilities are many, yet she moves through them with quiet grace. Marriage in this world is not a romantic ideal, but a social bond meant to strengthen alliances between families. Young people grow up aware that their future spouses may come from nearby clans. Arrangements are made after careful consideration, with elders negotiating the match to ensure harmony between households. Gifts are exchanged: cows, cloth, jewelry, vessels, each symbolizing trust and continuity. The boy has watched such ceremonies from afar. The gentle laughter, the songs, the joining of hands before the sacred fire. Marriage, to him, feels like a joining of rivers, two currents merging to form a stronger flow. Obligations between kin are many, but never burdensome. Families share harvests when one falls short, trade labor during planting and building, and gather together during illness or celebration. When a child is born, the entire clan rejoices. When someone passes on, the clan mourns as one body. The boy has seen how neighbors slip into each other's homes without formality, bringing baskets of grain or pots of broth when someone is ill. Kinship is woven through everyday acts of care. The clan's unity is seen most clearly during festivals. Entire families prepare together, grinding grains, shaping sweets, crafting small decorations from reeds and flowers. Elders recite old hymns, mothers prepare feast dishes, fathers build ceremonial platforms, and children collect firewood or bring water from the river. The boy loves these moments when everyone moves with shared purpose, the air buzzing with anticipation and joy. The family structure also guides inheritance and responsibility. The eldest often receives the home and land, caring for aging parents and continuing the lineage. Younger siblings may move to neighboring settlements after marriage, carrying with them the teachings and customs of their childhood home. Despite distance, the bond remains strong. Messages carried by traders, periodic visits, and shared rituals keep families connected across plains and rivers. In this world, kinship is not simply about blood. Those who work and live alongside one another often become family through loyalty and shared experience. A cousin by bond is valued as much as a cousin by birth. A child who loses parents is raised by relatives without hesitation, absorbed into the fabric of the clan with love and acceptance. The boy observes these connections with growing understanding. He sees how each person belongs to a network of duties and affections, how no one stands alone, and how each carries a part of the village's strength. He feels it in the way his mother's hand rests warmly on his shoulder, in the way his father teaches him patiently, in the way the grandmother recounts stories from her youth. These bonds shape his identity more deeply than anything else. As evening settles and the family gathers once more around the hearth, the boy watches his mother braid his sister's hair, her movements gentle and unhurried. He notices how the grandmother's eyes soften as she looks at her children and grandchildren. how the father's voice lowers as he offers guidance for the next day, how each small act strengthens their bonds. And in the quiet glow of the hearth, he becomes aware of something unspoken but unmistakable. Within this weave of kinship, women hold threads of remarkable strength, threading memory, ritual, nourishment, and wisdom through every corner of family life. This realization opens the path naturally to the next chapter, where the lives, roles, and responsibilities of women in the Vedic world unfold with deeper clarity. Morning returns with soft light filtering through the doorway, and the boy awakens to the sound of women's voices, calm, purposeful, woven together like strands of a song. His mother and grandmother sit outside grinding herbs on a flat stone, their fingers moving with practiced precision. A small collection of leaves, roots, and flowers lies beside them, each carefully gathered at the right time of day, each known by name and effect. The grandmother crushes a handful of neem leaves into a paste while explaining their cooling properties to the girl. The mother sorts through sprigs of tulsi and long pepper, noting which should be dried and which kept fresh. Herbal knowledge is a cornerstone of women's wisdom, handed down through generations. They know how to ease fevers with warm milk and spices, how to heal cuts with poultices, how to soothe stomach troubles with bitter herbs, and how to strengthen the body with ghee infused with roots. Women manage the domestic world not only through labor, but through understanding. They track food stores, ensure rituals are upheld, guide the household's spiritual rhythm, and teach the younger ones the skills they will someday carry into their own families. They are the first educators, the keepers of continuity, yet their authority reaches beyond the home. Women of the Vedic age hold a respected place within ritual and cultural life. Some attend gatherings, others lead household ceremonies, and some even compose hymns. The grandmother, noticing the boy listening, gestures for him to come closer as she recites a verse attributed to a woman sage, one of the Rishikas whose words appear in the Rig Veda. Her voice rises and falls in melodic cadence. As rivers join in fullness, as dawn brings light to sky, so wisdom flows in woman's mind, unbroken, pure, and high. The boy sits quietly, absorbing the idea that some of the sacred hymns carried across generations were shaped by women's voices, poets, philosophers, seekers of truth whose insights remain alive in every chant learned by the Brahmins. The grandmother continues, explaining that these sages, women like Gosha, Lopamudra, and Apala, questioned, reasoned, and engaged in dialogue with the gods. Their hymns explored longing, devotion, healing, and philosophical inquiry. The boy imagines them standing by rivers or beneath open skies, their words rising like smoke to join the sacred realm. Women's participation is not limited to spiritual matters. In early Vedic society, they hold rites that will shift and narrow in later centuries. They can attend gatherings of the clan, own cattle, and in some cases inherit property or choose their husbands. Marriage is often a partnership marked by shared labor rather than domination. A woman's counsel carries weight within the household, especially among elders. The boy sees this every day. His grandmother's advice influences decisions about planting, travel, and conflict. His mother's insights shape how the family approaches rituals, craft, and daily routines. Even in disputes, women play a vital role, offering perspectives that cool anger and encourage fairness. Outside, the girl continues her lessons, learning how to weave baskets, measure grain, prepare herbs, and maintain the hearth. But she also learns stories, prayers, and verses just as her brother does. Education in this world is not divided strictly by gender. It is guided by what each child needs to grow into their role with clarity and strength. Later in the afternoon, the mother joins a group of women near the well. They speak of harvest cycles, upcoming rituals, and community matters. Their discussion flows easily, shaped by respect and quiet wisdom. The boy notices how women's voices create balance, sometimes subtle, sometimes direct, always steady. Near sunset, the grandmother gathers the children to tell them a story about a woman who once protected her home through intelligence rather than force. The tale emphasizes not physical strength, but wit and insight, traits just as crucial for the survival of a clan. As the fire is lit for evening, the family gathers again. The boy watches his mother brush strands of hair from his sister's face, her expression serene and resolute. In that moment, he understands a simple truth. Women carry not just the tasks of the home, but its spirit. They hold memory, knowledge, faith, and continuity within their daily movements. Their presence shapes the rhythm of life as surely as the rising of the sun. And as night settles, the boy's thoughts turn toward the broader world of ideas, toward how knowledge is passed, expanded, questioned, and preserved. The intellectual presence of women, from sages to mothers, guides the story naturally into the next chapter, where learning and philosophy take center stage. The morning begins with a soft mist clinging to the earth, drifting upward from the river like a veil. The boy walks beside his father on a narrow path leading beyond the settled fields. They carry offerings, fruits, herbs, and a clay pot of milk, intended for a small forest hermitage where a group of rishis dwell. Such visits are rare but deeply meaningful. The sages, or rishis, are not separate from village life. They are threads woven into the spiritual tapestry that guides the community. They live apart, not to withdraw from the world, but to observe it more clearly. Their hermitages, ashramas, serve as places of meditation, study, and quiet teaching. The path winds between tall grasses, then dips gently into the shade of a forest grove. The air changes here. Birdsong grows richer. Insects hum softly in the underbrush, and the scent of wet leaves mixes with the faint aroma of incense carried on the breeze. Sunlight filters through the branches in patches, painting the forest floor with shifting patterns of gold and shadow. As they approach the ashrama, they see simple huts made of wood, mud, and woven reeds. Smoke rises from a small cooking fire, drifting lazily upward. The hermitage feels unhurried, timeless, as though it breathes at a slower pace than the village. A rishi greets them with a serene smile. His hair is long and matted, his clothing simple and worn, but his eyes shine with clarity. He accepts their offerings with gratitude, placing them gently beside the main fire altar. Several students sit nearby on mats of woven grass, their spines straight, their expressions calm. The boy sits beside his father, listening as the rishi speaks about the morning meditation. His voice flows like a river, steady, pure, and quiet. He explains how the day begins before sunrise, with chants offered to invoke inner stillness. The students rise in silence, bathe in the river, and sit beneath the trees to let their breath settle. The forest becomes their teacher, its sounds shaping their awareness. The boy watches as another sage hands the students palm leaf strips covered with tiny notches, early memory aids used for recitation practice. They do not write the hymns fully. Instead, they use marks to prompt memory. The rishi explains that sacred knowledge must live in the breath and mind, not just on surfaces. As the children chant, their voices blend with the forest's rhythm. The boy hears the syllables rise and fall in patterns that echo birdsong and the whisper of leaves. The cadence feels ancient and natural, as though the trees themselves are listening. The rishi leads the visitors to a shaded clearing where advanced students sit engaged in quiet discussion. Here, philosophy takes form, not through argument, but through contemplation. They speak of RTA, the cosmic order that binds all things, They explore the nature of the self, the cycles of time, and the harmony between humans and the divine. Their words are simple, yet layered with meaning. The boy feels small beside such depth of thought, yet strangely inspired. He senses that the forest ashrama is a place where questions matter more than answers, where seekers shape themselves through discipline and reflection. A gentle breeze stirs the branches overhead, scattering leaves across the clearing. The rishi gestures toward the movement. "Even the falling leaf teaches," he says softly. "Nothing happens without purpose. Nothing exists apart from the whole." They share a simple meal of fruits, nuts, and milk, eaten slowly and without conversation. Silence, the rishi explains, allows the mind to digest wisdom just as the body digests food. Afterward, the sages resume their meditation, seated beneath trees that have stood longer than any village memory. Before leaving, the father bows respectfully, and the boy follows. The rishi places a hand on the boy's head in blessing, murmuring a quiet verse about clarity and kindness. The warmth of that touch lingers as they walk home through the forest. On the journey back, the boy notices the world differently. The rustle of leaves seems fuller, the scent of earth richer, the sunlight more purposeful. The birds calling from the branches above feel like messengers, their songs woven into the larger harmony the rishis spoke of. He begins to understand why sages choose to live here, not as escape, but as connection. The forest is not separate from life. It is the breath of life made visible. And as he steps out of the grove and onto the sunlit path leading home, his thoughts drift naturally toward the beauty and power of the natural world itself. The rivers, animals, plants, and landscapes that shape the rhythm of every day in his village. This quiet shift guides the story gently into the next chapter, where the vast living world of nature becomes the focus. The morning light spreads gently across the plains as the boy walks through the village outskirts. The world feels fresh, washed clean by the dew that clings to every blade of grass. He pauses beneath a tall neem tree and listens, not just hearing the sounds but sensing the life in them. Birds greet the day with soft coos and sharp calls, their melodies layered like a natural orchestra. A quail sings somewhere near the river. A myna clicks its beak and flutters between branches. Each sound has meaning. Greetings, warnings, celebrations. Forests stretch in the distance, rising like quiet guardians of the land. Within them, towering sal and banyan trees form vast canopies where monkeys leap from limb to limb, chattering and scolding one another. Smaller animals, deer, wild boar, and jackals move in and out of the shadows. The boy remembers how, in the ashrama, the rishis spoke of each creature as part of a larger harmony. The deer symbolizes gentleness, the boar resilience, the bird's freedom. All are woven into the rhythm of the land. Closer to the village, the river is alive with its own pulse. The Sarasvati flows with clear, shimmering water, its surface catching the sunlight and breaking it into golden fragments. The river sings softly as it glides over stones, and its banks shift in gentle curves shaped by seasons of rain. The boy kneels at the edge, scooping cool water into his hands. The scent of wet earth rises to meet him, grounding and steady. Plants line the riverbank in vibrant greens, tall grasses, reed clusters, flowering shrubs with delicate blossoms that open only at certain times of day. The grandmother once explained how each plant has its own rhythm. Some bloom with the morning sun, others unfurl only at dusk, responding to unseen signals in the air and soil. The boy knows these patterns now. He can tell the time of day by the angle of light and the way the lotus flowers open or close. Nature signals much more than beauty. Birds migrating earlier than usual hint at incoming storms. The slow darkening of cloud edges foretells monsoon winds. A sudden hush in the forest might warn of predators nearby. The boy watches as a small flock of sparrows takes off in unison, their movement sharp and purposeful. Rain by evening, the grandmother would say, seeing the same sign. Nature teaches through patterns, quiet lessons written in wind, water, and light. As the boy walks along the edge of the fields, he notices how the soil changes beneath his feet. Some patches feel soft and fertile, others dry and cracked, shaped by weeks without rain. He crouches to observe tiny ants carrying food along an invisible highway in the earth. The rishis had spoken of such signs, ants moving with urgency, the sudden appearance of dragonflies hovering above grass, the behavior of cattle before storms. The land whispers its secrets to those who watch closely. The seasons guide everything. In early spring, the air grows fragrant, with new blossoms, and the fields awaken with bright shoots of millet and barley. Summer arrives with heat shimmering above the ground, driving animals toward shade and people toward the river. The monsoon transforms everything. Riverbanks swell, frogs croak loudly after the first heavy rain, and the earth exhales the scent of renewed life. Winter cools the land, making mornings crisp and evenings perfect for gatherings around the hearth. The boy thinks of the sages meditating beneath forest trees, their minds attuned to these rhythms. He realizes that understanding nature is a form of wisdom, one that guides hunters, farmers, healers, and travelers alike. His father taught him how to read cloud patterns. His mother taught him which plants prefer shade. His grandmother taught him the songs birds sing when the monsoon is near. All these pieces fit together like a woven mat. He lies down for a moment on the grass, gazing up at the sky. A hawk circles high above, wings spread wide as it rides a warm current of air. The boy imagines what it must feel like to see the land from above. The forests, the rivers, the scattered huts, the fields curving like patchwork across the plains. Everything connected, everything alive. When he rises, he feels the world more deeply than before. The land is not just a backdrop to their lives, it is the pulse that sustains them. Its rhythms dictate planting and harvest. Its signs warn of danger. Its cycles shape the flow of human activity. From the quiet teachings of the ashrama to the lively patterns of the village, nature forms the foundation of understanding. And as the boy heads back toward the settlement, he sees farmers walking into the fields, with tools slung over their shoulders. The sight draws him forward, reminding him that the wisdom of the natural world is inseparable from the work of cultivating it. The rhythm of nature becomes the rhythm of labor, guiding the story naturally toward the agricultural cycles that shape the village's survival. The agricultural cycle begins before a seed ever touches the soil. It begins with observation. The way clouds gather at the horizon, the songs of birds changing tone, the slow warming of the earth beneath bare feet. The boy stands with the farmers, listening to his father speak of the coming monsoon, pointing to the faint ring around the morning sun, a sign of moisture building in the sky. As days lengthen and heat deepens, the village prepares for planting. Women bring baskets of millet and barley seeds to the fields, each grain cleaned, sorted, and blessed. Before sowing begins, a small ritual is held at the edge of the land. The priest lights a tiny fire, offering ghee and crushed herbs to Agni, asking for fertile soil, steady rain, and protection from pests. The smoke rises in a thin, fragrant column, drifting across the fields like a gentle blessing. The boy joins the line of farmers walking barefoot through the soft earth, feeling its warmth against his toes. They scatter seeds in precise rows, their arms moving with the confidence of practice. The sound of seeds striking the ground creates a faint pattering rhythm, the earth swallowing them with quiet acceptance. The boy imitates his father's movements, learning how far to spread his arm, how to judge the spacing, how to trust that the invisible seeds will soon sprout into life. When the first clouds gather thick and heavy, the air fills with anticipation. The village pauses more often to scan the horizon. Children sense the coming change, running outside to catch any stray droplets. The grandmother watches the behavior of birds. If they fly low, she knows rain is close. And then, often without warning, the skies open. Rain falls in warm sheets, drumming against the earth with a sound like steady applause. The fields drink greedily, darkening as they absorb water. Within days, tiny shoots of green emerge, fragile, trembling, yet bright with promise. The boy kneels to examine them, marveling at their delicate strength. The monsoon brings more than growth. It brings community rhythm. Roads soften, rivers swell, and families gather indoors to weave mats, repair tools, and tell stories. The steady rain becomes a kind of music that shapes daily life. Cattle are sheltered, grain baskets checked, and herbs dried and stored. The women hum while grinding spices, their songs blending with the rain's constant pulse. As the monsoon fades and the air clears, the fields transform. Tall stalks of millet sway in the wind. Barley heads bend under their own weight. Wildflowers bloom between field edges, visited by bees that weave through the air in lazy loops. The boy walks between rows of crops, brushing his fingers along the stalks, sensing the fullness of the earth. Harvest season begins with gratitude. Before a single crop is cut, the priest and several elders gather to offer thanks to the land. A small altar is set at the edge of the field with flowers, cooked grains, and a bowl of milk. The ritual acknowledges not just the yield, but the harmony between land, rain, seed, and effort. The harvest itself is joyful work. Families gather together, laughing and singing as they cut the ripe stalks. Sickles flash in the sunlight. Children carry bundles to waiting carts. Women tie the grain into neat sheaves, lining them in rows to dry. The boy works alongside his father, feeling the satisfaction of each pile growing steadily higher. After days of effort, the village celebrates. A festival marks the turning of the season. Lanterns hung outside homes, sweet dishes made with freshly harvested grain, songs echoing late into the night. Dancers form circles around the central fire, their steps repeating patterns as old as memory. The boy joins in shyly at first, but soon finds the rhythm, feeling the joy of movement, matched to the season's energy. As the year progresses, the cycle continues. Fields resting, soil enriched by cattle dung and decaying stalks, seeds saved and stored. Each season has its rituals, offerings before planting, songs during rain, gratitude at harvest, and quiet reflection in the cooler months. The boy begins to understand that agriculture is not merely work, it is partnership with the land. The wheel of the year turns because people listen to birds, clouds, water, wind. The land gives, and the people give back. When the final festival of the year draws near, the village becomes vibrant with preparation. Women clean their homes and decorate doorways with patterns of flower and colored earth. Men repair tools and gather firewood. Children practice songs and help shape small clay lamps for the celebration. These festivals are more than celebrations of harvest. They reaffirm family bonds, clan unity, and the shared rhythm of life that continues year after year. As the boy watches preparations unfold, he notices how families gather more closely, how kin visit one another, bringing gifts from the harvest. The festival lights glow warmly across the settlement, illuminating faces filled with affection and pride. And in this glow, the story naturally shifts toward the heart of these gatherings, the way festivals bring families together, revealing customs, rituals, and the shared joy that defines Vedic communal life. With the agricultural wheel completing its turn, the path now leads seamlessly into the next chapter, the festivals and ceremonies that draw the entire community into celebration. The village awakens before sunrise, on the morning of the first major festival. A soft stillness covers the land, broken only by the lowing of cattle and the distant call of a bird greeting the day. Children stir early, excitement pulling them from their mats. Women prepare offerings, bowls of ghee, fresh milk, honey and grains, arranging them on small clay plates adorned with flowers gathered the night before. The boy helps his father place bundles of dried grass and kindling in the central clearing. This festival honors Agni, the sacred fire, the messenger who carries human devotion to the divine. As the sky lightens from deep blue to pale gold, the priest steps forward with a smoldering ember carefully preserved from the household hearth. He places it at the center of the dry wood. The moment the flame catches, it rises eagerly, flickering taller as if stretching after sleep. Villagers chant softly as the fire grows, voices joining the crackling sound, forming a warm tapestry of devotion. The boy watches the flame dance, its light reflected in the eyes of everyone present. Agni is more than fire. He is purification, warmth, guidance. Children toss small grains into the flames, giggling as sparks swirl upward like fireflies being set free. As the sun rises fully, the festival transforms. Women light smaller lamps, tiny clay diyas, filled with ghee, and place them along paths and thresholds. Their soft glows guide the footsteps of villagers, creating a ribbon of golden light leading through the entire settlement. Even as daylight brightens, the lamps remain symbols of clarity and hope. Later in the morning, the festival shifts to honor Ushas, the radiant goddess of dawn. Girls wear garlands woven from pale blossoms, and boys carry handfuls of petals to offer at the small shrine near the river. Ushas is celebrated not with fire, but with freshness. Cool water splashed on the forehead, flowers released onto the river's surface, songs sung in voices still soft with sleep. The grandmother leads the children to a viewpoint overlooking the plains. There they watch the sunlight travel across the land, touching each hut, each field, each cluster of trees. She speaks of Ushas as the bringer of renewal, the one who awakens all beings to their daily duties. The boy feels the truth of this in the warmth rising on his skin. As midday approaches, the festival turns toward celebration of prosperity. The harvest feast begins. Villagers gather under large woven canopies, bringing dishes prepared from the newly gathered grains. Millet cakes sweetened with honey, roasted barley flavored with ghee, lentil stews scented with herbs, and fresh curds served in clay bowls. The air smells of abundance, sweet, savory, warm. Laughter fills the space as families eat together. Elders bless the younger generation with touches on the forehead. Children run circles around the clearing, their faces smeared with honey from stolen treats. Drums begin, a rhythmic beat, and soon feet follow, circling, stamping, weaving through patterns as old as the community itself. As evening draws near, the festival takes on a more mystical tone. Under the rising moon, the villagers prepare for a ritual honoring Soma, the sacred plant associated with clarity, inspiration, and divine communion. The priest crushes its leaves with reverence, mixing the essence with water in a stone bowl. The drink is shared only among the elders and sages, for its purpose is not pleasure, but insight. They consume it slowly, eyes closed, faces calm, murmuring hymns that rise and fall like waves. The boy observes from a respectful distance, sensing the significance even if he does not fully understand it. The air feels charged, gentle but powerful, as though the night itself is listening. Once the ritual concludes, Lamps are relit throughout the village. Their flames shimmer in the darkness, forming a constellation of earthly stars. Families walk together beneath their warm glow, returning home in clusters. The boy walks beside his grandmother, her hand resting on his shoulder. She tells him that festivals keep the heart open, that joy shared becomes strength carried into the harder seasons. Back at home, the mother prepares warm milk infused with herbs to soothe the family after the day's excitement. The father rubs fragrant oil on the children's foreheads, a gesture of blessing and protection. The boy feels the calm settling into his limbs, the festival's brightness softening into comfort. As he lies down to sleep, the sounds of celebration fade into the night. The faint echo of a drum beat, the soft laughter of neighbors, the crackle of a distant dying flame. And with the warmth of the festival still lingering in his chest, the boy's thoughts shift naturally toward the next realm of village wisdom, the care of the body, the healing of illness, and the ancient knowledge of medicine that sustains life, just as surely as the festivals nourish the spirit. This gentle drift leads seamlessly into the next chapter, where healing and remedies become the center of the story. The healer walks with deliberate steps, carrying a woven bag that releases the scent of dried leaves, roots, and oils with each movement. Her hair is streaked with silver, her skin weathered from years of tending to others, yet her posture radiates quiet authority. She greets the villagers with a nod, and families gather to seek remedies for aches, lingering fevers, or simple renewal after festival feasting. The grandmother and mother stand ready with bowls of water, clean cloths, and freshly prepared herbs from the previous day. The healer sits beneath the shade of the neem tree, arranging her supplies with careful precision. Small packets of powdered bark, bundles of dried flowers, pots of ghee infused with spices, all placed in an order known only to her. The boy watches from a respectful distance as her work begins. Her first patient is an older man complaining of stiffness in his joints. The healer mixes warm ghee with ground turmeric and ginger, massaging the paste onto his arms and legs. She explains gently that the warming herbs will ease the congestion in his limbs, while the oil will bring comfort and flexibility. The boy notices how the man exhales, relief already settling into him. Next, a mother brings her coughing child. The healer crushes long pepper and holy basil leaves, blending them with honey until the mixture forms a thick paste. She instructs the mother to give the child a small spoonful twice a day, along with warm water. Her tone is reassuring, not just treating symptoms, but soothing the mother's worry. As she works, she teaches. Healing, she explains, is not simply about remedies. It is about understanding the balance within the body. Heat and cold, moisture and dryness, fatigue and vitality, all must be observed. Illness is an imbalance, not a punishment. The boy leans closer as she takes a handful of crushed neem leaves for another patient. The smell is sharp and clean. Neem cools the blood, she says softly, knowing her audience includes curious young ears. Just as fire has its place, coolness has its power. Over the course of the day, more villagers arrive. A young man with a sprained ankle receives a poultice of crushed herbs bound with cloth. A woman whose voice has grown hoarse from festival singing is given warm milk mixed with ghee and cardamom. Another family seeks guidance on digestive trouble. The healer prepares a tea of cumin, coriander, and fennel, advising them to drink it slowly after meals. Between patients, she shares wisdom rooted in early Ayurvedic thought, though the word Ayurveda itself is not yet commonly used. Still, the principles exist in their earliest form: prevention through balance, observation of nature's rhythms, the belief that physical and spiritual well-being are intertwined. The body is seen as a microcosm of the greater world, influenced by season, climate, diet, and emotion. She explains to the boy and his sister that certain herbs must be gathered at specific times. Flowers at dawn, when their energy is fresh. Roots at dusk, when the earth cools. Leaves after rain, when their oils rise. Healing is not a task, but a relationship with the land. As afternoon settles in, she checks on a woman in late pregnancy. The healer moves with exceptional gentleness, placing her hands lightly on the woman's belly, listening not only with ears but with intuition, shaped by decades of experience. She prepares a soothing drink of warm milk, infused with saffron to support strength and calm. The boy watches with fascination. He sees how the healer's presence eases the mother's breathing, how her voice steadies the air around her. Later, she sits beside the grandmother and shares stories of births she has guided. Tales filled not with drama, but with patience, reverence, and the quiet certainty that life follows its own sacred rhythm. The grandmother nods, offering her own experiences in return. By evening, as the healer prepares to rest, she gives the mother and grandmother a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside are herbs to support the pregnant woman through the coming days and teas to ease discomfort. She instructs them carefully, ensuring they understand each step. Before leaving, she calls the boy over. From her bag, she retrieves a tiny clay pot filled with fragrant balm. "For cold days," she says, placing it in his hands. "Rub it on your chest and breathe deeply." The boy bows his head with gratitude. Her touch is warm, her eyes filled with the same steady light he saw in the rishis beneath the forest trees. As she walks away, her figure framed by the setting sun, the boy realizes that healing is not separate from daily life. It flows through it, just as surely as water flows through the river. And as he returns inside with his family, his mind lingers on the healer's visit, especially the care shown to the pregnant woman. His grandmother begins preparing cloths for the coming birth, humming softly. This gentle shift toward the beginning of life guides the story naturally into the next chapter, where childbirth, infancy, and the stages of human growth take their place at the center of village life. The morning brings a ripple of excitement across the village. Word spreads that the pregnant woman's labor has begun. Women hurry to her home with warm water, cloths, and herbs, while the men respectfully step aside, knowing this domain belongs to the skilled hands of mothers, midwives, and the healer's trained assistants. Inside, the air is warm and calm. The grandmother joins the gathering of women, offering gentle words of support. Birth in the Vedic age is not treated with fear, but with reverence. An event marked by sacredness and collective responsibility. The hearth fire is kept steady, its flame symbolizing continuity and protection. A small bowl of ghee and crushed herbs burns nearby, scenting the room with a soothing aroma. When the child finally enters the world, a soft cry fills the home. The women smile, their faces glowing in the firelight. The newborn is wrapped in warm cloth and placed near the mother's chest. The grandmother murmurs the first blessing, a whispered invocation to Agni and the ancestors, asking for strength, clarity, and long life. Soon after comes the Jata Karma, the rite of welcoming. A few drops of honey mixed with ghee are touched to the baby's lips, symbolizing the sweetness of life. The father, invited in after the first moments, touches the child gently and recites a quiet prayer about wisdom and courage. Even the boy, standing outside with other children, feels a warmth in his chest, knowing a new member of the community has arrived. In the days that follow, the baby is honored with additional samskaras, rites of passage that frame each stage of life. The namakarana, the naming ceremony, occurs when the moon reaches a certain phase. Elders gather to choose a name that carries meaning, sometimes inspired by ancestors, sometimes by nature, sometimes by a hope the parents hold in their hearts. The name becomes both identity and blessing. The boy remembers his own naming, how his grandmother traced a small dot of turmeric paste on his forehead, marking him with protection. These small gestures weave belonging into a child's early memories, even if remembered only through stories. As children grow, more samskaras guide their steps. The annaprashana, the first feeding of solid food, is celebrated with joy. The baby is given a tiny spoonful of cooked grain, often barley or rice, symbolizing nourishment and the start of independence. Laughter fills the home as the infant reacts to the unfamiliar texture. Later comes the time for education. Although the more formal Upanayana ceremony, associated with boys beginning Vedic study, develops more fully in later periods, its early form still exists here. Parents ceremonially entrust children to the learning process, offering prayers that they grow in wisdom, discipline, and compassion. The boy remembers sitting beside his father at dawn years ago, reciting his first hymns with trembling confidence. As the boy watches his younger peers move through these rites, he understands that each samskara is a milestone, a reminder that growth is sacred, not accidental. Years pass quickly in the flow of village life, and soon the children he once played with at the river become young adults. Marriage preparations begin with careful conversations between families. Marriage, in this world, is both personal and communal. It strengthens alliances, expands kinship ties, and ensures continuity. The Vivaha ceremony begins with offerings at the hearth. The bride's family prepares gifts, cows, pottery, cloth, symbols of prosperity and goodwill. The groom's family brings grains and ghee. The couple walks around the sacred fire, taking 7 symbolic steps together, each representing a vow: nourishment, strength, prosperity, harmony, progeny, long companionship, and mutual respect. The boy, now older, watches one of these ceremonies with quiet wonder. The couple's hands are bound with a cord of grass. The fire crackles softly, and the air feels thick with blessing. He understands instinctively that marriage is not only a union of 2 people, but of 2 lineages, 2 histories, 2 hopes for the future. Life continues, and with it comes the final rite, one that the boy hears spoken of in gentle tones, reserved for quiet moments. When a respected elder passes, the clan gathers in solemn unity. The body is bathed, wrapped, and carried to the riverside with hymns of peace. The fire is lit once more, not to begin a life, but to honor one completed. This final ceremony, the Antyesti, reminds the village that death is not an ending, but a return, a merging with the ancestors who guide the living. Offerings are made for the departed soul, and prayers ask for safe passage into the unseen realms. The boy sees how grief transforms into remembrance. Stories of the elder's life are shared, acts of kindness, wisdom offered, lessons taught. Children listen closely, learning that ancestors are not distant figures, but living influences carried in memory and ritual. As the community walks back from the river, the grandmother places a hand on the boy's shoulder. Her voice is soft. "Life moves in circles," she says. Birth to childhood, childhood to adulthood, adulthood to elderhood, elderhood to the ancestors. We walk the same path, each in our time. The boy feels the truth settle deep within him, the understanding that every stage of life is honored, every transition sacred. And as the village resumes its peaceful rhythm, his thoughts turn gently toward the unseen realm itself. The ancestors, their stories, their presence woven through daily life. This awareness guides the story naturally toward the next chapter, where ancestral reverence and spiritual lineage come into clearer focus. The morning after the final rites is cool and still. Mist hangs low over the river, drifting in thin curls that move like restless spirits. The boy walks with his father to the water's edge, where offerings from the previous day still float. A few blossoms, a fragment of cloth, the last glowing memory of the elder's life carried downstream. His father stands quietly, palms pressed together. The boy mirrors him, sensing that this moment is not merely about sorrow. It is about connection. The river, always flowing, becomes a reminder that life continues, moving forward while holding traces of all that came before. As they walk back to the village, they pass small shrines, simple stones, carved wooden posts, and humble clay structures placed beneath banyan trees. These are places where families leave offerings for ancestors. A handful of grain, a piece of fruit, a splash of water. Gifts not of necessity, but of remembrance. The ancestors, the boy has been taught, are not distant figures who fade with time. They are the unseen roots of the present, guiding the living quietly, supporting them like the foundation of a home. At midday, the grandmother gathers the children near the hearth. She traces a circle in the ashes, drawing symbols with her fingertip. Each mark represents something: a lineage, a memory, a blessing. She explains that when people speak of ancestors, they speak not only of those they knew, but also of those whose names are forgotten. Their strengths, choices, and lessons live on, shaping each new generation. She tells them stories of their own lineage: warriors who protected cattle during lean years, women who led families during droughts, sages who traveled to distant gatherings to learn and share wisdom. The boy listens intently. These stories feel like invisible threads woven into his own identity. He begins to understand that who he is does not begin with his birth. It extends back through countless lives, layered like rings within a tree trunk. Later in the afternoon, the community gathers for a simple ritual at the central fire. Each family brings a small offering: milk, grains, flowers, placing them gently into the flames. As the fire crackles, sending fragrant smoke upward, the priest chants verses, acknowledging the pittas, the departed ancestors. His voice carries the weight of centuries, rising and falling like a slow breath. May they guide us, he intones softly. May they protect us. May their wisdom flow through us as river flows to sea. The boy watches the smoke ascend and imagines it carrying their gratitude into unseen realms. He feels the presence of those who walked the land before him, those who planted the first fields, built the earliest huts, carved the paths through forest and plain. Their lives made his own possible. After the ritual, families sit together sharing memories. Some speak with laughter, others with quiet tears, but always with reverence. The boy hears a story about the recently departed elder, how he once rescued a calf during a storm, how he used to recite hymns under the neem tree, how he taught younger generations to mend tools with patience and care. These stories transform the elder from a fading memory into a living presence carried in every retelling. That evening, as the sun dips behind distant trees, the boy walks alone to the edge of the village. The sky glows in hues of amber and deep gold. He feels a gentle awareness settle over him, as though unseen eyes watch with kindness. The air holds a stillness that seems alive. He kneels and presses his palm to the earth. It feels warm, steady, familiar. Beneath the soil lie generations of footsteps, struggles, triumphs, and hopes. The ancestors are not distant shadows. They are the pulse beneath everything: the hearth's warmth, the field's bounty, the continuity of family and clan. The boy feels himself part of something vast and unbroken. As he returns toward the village lights, the quiet reverence he carries within begins to shift into something calmer, deeper, an introspective stillness. The stories of ancestors, the rituals of remembrance, and the awareness of continuity gently incline his mind toward reflection and inner quiet. And so the next movement of his journey emerges naturally. A turn inward, toward meditation, breath, and the ancient practices that help the living align with the unseen rhythms of the world. The story now flows softly into the next chapter, where contemplation becomes the guiding thread. The next dawn breaks softly, with a sky the color of pale lotus petals. The boy wakes before the others, sensing that this morning wishes to be met in silence. He steps outside and finds the air cool against his skin, scented with lingering night mist and the faint smoke of dying embers. All around him, the village still sleeps. Only the river seems awake, whispering its endless song. He walks toward a small grove near the edge of the fields, a place the rishis once mentioned during their visit. It is said that anyone seeking quiet understanding should begin the day where earth, air, and breath meet without disturbance. The boy sits at the base of a large banyan tree, its roots curling around him like gentle arms. At first, he simply listens. Birds stir slowly in the branches above, soft coos, occasional chirps. Leaves rustle faintly as the breeze rises. His own breath, once quick from walking, begins to slow. He closes his eyes, letting the sounds settle inside him. The world does not disappear. It softens. In early Vedic life, meditation is not yet a formal system with strict postures or advanced techniques. It arises naturally from living close to the land, the river, the fire. It begins with observation, then shifts to presence. The boy remembers how the rishi placed a hand on his head and spoke of the breath as the bridge between body and spirit. So he begins there. He inhales gently through his nose, feeling the air fill his chest. He exhales slowly, letting his shoulders relax. The rhythm finds him, not the other way around, steady, unforced. Each breath feels like a tide moving in and out, carrying away the dust of thought. He thinks of the elders describing prana, the life force carried on the breath. He imagines it as a warm glow traveling through him, illuminating the places where worry hides or tension lingers. With each exhale, those tight places loosen. With each inhale, clarity grows. Minutes pass, though he does not measure them. The sun climbs a little higher, warming patches of grass around him. His breath deepens naturally, slow and full. For a moment, he feels as though he is breathing with the world, the tree behind him, the river ahead, the hidden animals waking in the underbrush. Early meditation, the sages say, is not an escape from life, but a way of entering it more completely. It teaches the listener to observe thoughts without being pulled by them, to watch emotions without being swept away. The boy notices thoughts rising, memories of the festival, the healer's visit, the elder's final rites, but they pass like shadows on water, leaving no disturbance. He places his hands on his knees, palms resting upward. This simple gesture, taught by a visiting Brahmin, symbolizes openness to insight. Breath flows in, breath flows out. His mind grows quieter. Even the desire to meditate fades, replaced by simple presence. After a while, he hears footsteps. His father approaches, but he does not speak. He sits beside the boy in silence. They share the moment wordlessly. 2 breaths, 2 lives, anchored in the same stillness. Eventually the father murmurs, "The mind is like this at dawn, clear, gentle, ready to learn." The boy nods. He feels the truth of it in his chest. Meditation, he realizes, is not about effort. It is about remembering who he is beneath layers of noise, part of a lineage, part of the land, part of the great unfolding rhythm of life. As the sun rises fully, they stand together. The father places a hand on the boy's shoulder, and they walk back to the village without speaking. The boy feels grounded, quiet, and strangely light, as though something heavy has dissolved inside him. Later that day, the boy sees the grandmother preparing the hearth for the evening. The coming night holds significance. She begins to gather fragrant wood and oils, whispering hymns under her breath. The boy helps her arrange the fire pit, sensing that this night will offer a form of peace unlike any before. Meditation has softened his awareness, opened a space within him. Now that space feels ready to receive something deeper, something final, gentle, luminous. The stillness of his morning practice becomes the bridge that carries him into the last chapter, where the sacred fire and the quiet night weave together into the story's peaceful closing movement. The final light of day fades slowly over the plains, revealing the soft murmur of night. The sky becomes a vast, shimmering tapestry of stars, uncountable, glistening, ancient. The boy and his family gather outside their thatched roof home, the sacred fire glowing at the center of their small courtyard. Its gentle warmth pushes back the coolness of the night, casting shadows that sway like spirits in a slow dance. The grandmother arranges fragrant wood, tamarind bark, a bit of sandal to feed the flame. As the fire brightens, its golden light flickers against her face, softening the deep lines carved by time and wisdom. She nods for the boy to sit close. Together, they watch sparks rise into the dark, drifting upward as though reuniting with the stars from which they came. The fire crackles softly, filling the air with a comforting rhythm. Its sound blends with the quiet chorus of crickets, the distant rush of the river, and the low murmur of cattle settling in their pens for the night. The world feels hushed, but not empty, alive in a way that quiet places often are, humming with the unseen pulse of life. The family begins their final ritual of the day. The father recites a hymn to Agni, his voice low and steady. The mother adds dried grains into the flame, offering gratitude for nourishment and shelter. The children sit close together, feeling the warmth seep into their skin. The fire's glow illuminates their faces in soft amber, like sunlight carried into the night. The boy closes his eyes for a moment, feeling the breath he cultivated at dawn return to him now. Slow, even, comforting. The entire day moves gently through his mind. The morning mist, the forest hermitage, the wisdom of sages, the rhythms of nature, the joy of festivals, the healer's gentle hands, the birth of new life, the stories of ancestors, the stillness of meditation. Each moment feels like a bead on a string, connected by something invisible yet steady. When he opens his eyes again, the stars seem brighter. He wonders how many generations before him have looked at this same sky, breathed this same air, warmed themselves by a fire like this. The grandmother, sensing his thoughts, leans closer and whispers, "The sky remembers us, long after we forget our own names." The words settle in him like warm embers. He gazes upward, taking in the vastness of the cosmos, a dome so full of light it seems impossible to comprehend. In Vedic life, the stars are not distant. They are living presences, symbols of the gods, guides for seasons, markers of time. Tonight, they feel close enough to touch. As the fire burns steadily, the mother begins to hum a soft tune, an old melody passed down through generations. The father joins, with a quiet drone, and soon their voices merge in a gentle harmony that drifts into the night air. It is not a performance, but a release, a way of letting the day settle into the heart like sand settling at the bottom of a clear river. The boy leans back onto a woven mat. His sister lies beside him, tracing constellations with a small finger. The grandmother reclines slowly, bones creaking softly, her eyes reflecting firelight and starlight at once. One by one, the family settles into peaceful stillness, letting the night wrap around them like a sacred cloth. Above them, the sky deepens into true darkness, revealing stars that had been hidden just moments before. Some twinkle sharply, like fresh sparks from the fire. Others glow softly, vast and old. A faint breeze moves across the plains, carrying the scent of river water and blooming night flowers. The boy listens to the night with his whole being. In the distance, an owl calls. A jackal's cry echoes from the forest edge. The river murmurs like a lullaby, crafted long before language existed. Everything feels connected. Every sound, every breath, every heartbeat. This unity, he realizes, is the essence of his world. Slowly, sleep begins to settle over the family. The fire dims to a warm halo, still pulsing gently but without urgency. The boy closes his eyes. Behind his eyelids, the images of the day rise softly and fade like drifting smoke. He feels the earth beneath him, solid, patient, timeless. He feels the warmth of his family beside him. He feels the stars above, watching as they have watched for thousands of years. In this moment, he understands something simple and profound. Life moves in rhythms, and when one listens closely, every rhythm becomes a kind of prayer. The sacred fire crackles one last time before settling into glowing coals. The night holds the family in its quiet embrace. Tradition flows into tomorrow. Memory flows into breath. Breath flows into sleep. And as the plains of ancient Vedic India fall into deep stillness, the story closes gently, wrapped in continuity, illuminated by starlight, and carried by the quiet beauty of a world long past, yet forever alive in the human heart.